The Young Turks and Kyle Kulinski of Secular Talk have teamed up with veterans of Bernie Sanders' campaign to launch a new initiative to take over the Democratic Party once and for all. So it's called Justice Democrats, and this is something that I am overwhelmingly excited about. Now, the first question, before we even get to what Justice Democrats are, is why even bother with the Democratic Party? Because I talk about how the Democratic Party is a lost cause and how they're rotten to the core. So why not just start a new party? Why not take all of the resources that Justice Democrats can raise and funnel this towards creating a brand new party that we're in control of? Well, I'll let Kyle Kulinski explain why that might not be the best strategy.
And all of the institutional biases against third parties are so immensely strong that we're effectively handicapping ourselves if we go into it trying to do a third party. It's like taking a sledgehammer, swinging it at your kneecap, and then saying, okay, now it's time to go run that marathon you spoke about. Well, if I'm going to run the marathon, I should be in tip-top shape now, shouldn't I? I should give myself the best possible chance, not the worst chance. So, for example, the Green Party, who I absolutely love, they've had some successes here and there, but by and large, they are not what's viewed as a viable third party. And again, it's not their fault. It's the fault of the institutional biases against them and against third parties in general. But if you're a member of the Green Party and you're a member of the Democratic Socialists, let me tell you right now, you are our allies. I view you as our allies. So I don't want people to take it the wrong way. I need them to understand exactly where we're coming from. And if you read the platform of the Justice Democrats, we specifically refer to reforms that we favor that would help third parties and remove some of those institutional biases. But based on our calculations, our highest chance of winning and actually getting the policies we want implemented is to take over the Democratic Party.
So in my opinion, I think Kyle's logic here is absolutely sound. And I've kind of made similar arguments here. I've stated that, yes, unfortunately, we have to begrudgingly work within the Democratic Party, but simultaneously try to build a viable third-party alternative because, unfortunately,
welcome to the first episode, I guess we can call it, first time meeting in this capacity, the Post-Duopoly show hosted by RBN, and we have Hard Lens Media and Do Dissidence along with RBN for this stream. This is a powerhouse, but welcome, gentlemen, to the show. We'll start with Kit and go to Do Dissidence. What's up, Kit?
It's first of all, I want to thank you guys for the opportunity to be on this outstanding power panel in regards to discussing, well, what the hell happened to the infamous progressive movement that was gaining momentum in 2016. As always, I think it's important for us to look at this not only through our own biases, but also to look at what went wrong and how can we deviate away from this epic failure of relying on the two-party system. I know I have been criticized very a lot, at least since we started Hard Lens, about how I've been going after the Democratic Party. Look, I'm just as critical of the GOP too, but we got to break away from the two-party system. And this is a discussion that is greatly needed, especially with all of the current events that we'll get into in regards to the failure of the Bernie Sanders industrial complex that you guys have coined. And again, it's something that needs to be discussed right away. There you go.
We'll go to Keaton and then Russell.
Well, hi, everybody. My name is Mike Figueiredo. It's great to be here with you all. I just realized in watching that, I look like Mike Figueiredo after his life has gone sideways. That's kind of what I look like now. Looking at that spring chicken back there. What was that, 5-6 years back ago. By now? Yeah, 7, insane. Yeah. No, obviously always great to talk to you guys, and this should be a really fun time. And, yeah, I mean, look, I think you guys mentioned when we were on your show last time that you guys started post-Bernie 2020, which I think is really significant because, you know, you guys didn't build your show on a presidential campaign. You built your whole network here in the aftermath of a failed presidential campaign. And that's a real difference between the way you guys built your audience and the way those guys that we just saw built theirs. And I think that plays a huge part in what we talk about when we talk about the Bernie Sanders industrial complex. So should be a great time. Always great to see you guys. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. And Russell.
This isn't the show with Ole Emmy. I thought we were gonna be with David Dalton.
No. Post-Duopoly leftist.
The
leftist mafia.
Where's the cartoon Illuminati person? The cartoon.
They're the leftist mafia that only talk about red blue shit.
Yeah.
Leftist mafia, but we're not going to cover Ukraine. Leftist mafia, but we're not going to cover the multiple genocides of the Biden administration. Man, we are such a leftist mob, but we only cover.
See, that was what I prepared. I prepared for a totally different show. They always talk about how the presidency ages you. They never talk about how alternative media ages you, because look at this guy. Look at what this has done to Kyle. Yeah. I mean, I'm starting here. I'm going to look like the Crypt Keeper in 3 years. Yeah, we've been talking a lot about this. I don't know about you guys. Like, we definitely have some people on our channel, and they're welcome, and we're just honest what our views are. We have some people who are for Marianne. We have some people who are for RFK. More RFK. You get more of that. And I just don't understand what part of we could pick the candidate in a back room if we wanted to. They didn't understand. The DNC literally went into a courtroom and made a case for the idea, and the court ruled in their favor, actually, that they could pick a candidate in a cigar-filled back room. So,
come on, man. Stop bringing up facts. You're ruining my vibe right now. We're trying to vibe, okay? We're trying to talk about positive ideas. Okay? Post-Duopoly left is pissing me off.
Well, the thing is, I mean, it's really impossible to be positive in regards to seeing what happened to the progressive movement that started in 2016 with Bernie Sanders. And look, folks, we're going to be having a very rough conversation, and a lot of us are going to come to terms with. I mean, I said on my show, look, I took the L by thinking that Bernie's campaign would be ready in 2020. I was wrong. That was a horrible mistake from my perspective. And for a lot of us, it's going to be difficult. It's not going to be easy, but we need to have this conversation so that others don't make the mistakes that we saw in 2016 and 2020. And I fear that people are trying to manufacture something again, and that cannot happen, especially if we want there to be change, because relying on the two-party system or building your network off a presidential candidate, hopes and dreams, and oh no, we lost, let's try again, vote Democrat. We don't have time. This is not the time, and we can't afford it. So for a lot of folks, hey, we're not trying to ruin your vibe. Let this inspire you and, yes, enrage you to be better and to be stronger.
And can we have a conversation about why it's important that we have a post-duopoly leftist, independent alternative media? I mean, these things didn't exist. The YouTube was littered with reformist politics, right? And because the way the same way corporate media does, shut out dissenting opinions and manufacture consent of what a left-wing opinion is, left YouTube has been nothing but social democrats. Social democrats, and for a very long time, they will be saying their own echo chamber. Y'all know they're like loud children. Hold on, let me mute real quick. Yeah, it's pretty loud. They were used to, for a long time, making these arguments without any counter. Like, you see Crystal Ball when she was talking to Jordan, when she said, third party people grow up, and she was roasted before RBN, before Heartland, before Due Dissonance. You have these Democrat simps that will make lazy arguments against third parties, but no one there to correct them. Now, for the first time, you have the post-duopoly leftists, you have RBN, you have Due Dissonance, and Heartland Media that mocks these people, and then they get upset, like, why are you guys criticizing people you have you agree on most issues? Before, there was no stock put on strategy. Like, when people say we agree on 95% of the issue, like how much the strategy is a part of that equation? Because I say strategy is a big part of that. pod, at least 50%. If we disagree on strategy, we disagree on at least 50%. Strategy is everything. Now, I want to go back to that video because, for one, they lied because in that video, Mike Figueredo mentioned how they're going to be focused on building third parties as well. Lie. Didn't happen. Did not happen. They are still anti-third party. Secondly, I'm going to ask you guys this question. How is it a smart idea to divide the resources? So what he said, well, historically, third parties have had a hard time winning. Third parties cannot get off the ground. So we have this idea. Well, we're going to have a progressive movement in the Democratic Party, and we're also going to build a third party. So you just acknowledge that it's hard to take over the Democratic Party. You acknowledge it's hard to build a third party, but we somehow going to accomplish both with half resources, where we not all in. Now, half labor going this way, half resources going this way, but we're going to do something that has not been done with a half in, with 1 foot in, 1 foot out. That's ridiculous. Go ahead, kid.
So here's what I think was going on with that mindset back in that time. I think there was a lot of idealism and people being naive. That's the word. And look, hey, I was naive to think that Bernie Sanders campaign would be ready in 2020. I really thought that.
I was naive.
Yeah. And so the thing is, we were all impacted by this. So the thing is, the whole idea of, okay, there's Bernie Sanders and there's this Justice Democrat group, brand new Congress, our revolution coming up. Let's see if we could try and rough them up here, but also do something with third parties, which never came into fruition, by the way. But there was this idea of maybe we could do both. But the real pathway was towards third parties. But people were still holding on to hope for Bernie 2020. And that's why there was all that investment into Justice Democrats, brand new Congress. I mean, TYT captured that lightning in the bottle of the Bernie Sanders campaign. Yep. We have to remember where we were all at that time. I mean, TYT was the only network at that time, and they had a presidential candidate that was universally popular amongst a lot of voters, including Trump supporters, which people don't talk about. And there was the idea of, we can make it repeat itself. Let's try and repeat itself. And they did try to repeat it, but it ended up in failure again. So there was this attempt. People were being naive and held on to quote Obama, the audacity of hope.
I was naive because I thought Bernie or Busters actually meant it. Because I was one of these people.
Yeah.
I was on the Bernie campaign. And remember where there was hashtag no middle ground that would trend almost every week. No middle ground whenever Joe Biden or a neoliberal will say something stupid. No middle ground on climate. Bernie or Buzz. Bernie or Buzz used to trend. And I was like one of the leading people on the shit. And I was naive because remember, CJ, the conversation we had where we thought the movement was bigger than we thought it than actually was. So I thought the Bernie movement was like, man, we got all these leftists. No, it's fucking liberals. So we was like, Bernie or Buzz, Bernie or Buzz. No middle ground. They were just performative. They didn't mean that. Right. That was my miscalculation. So I was thinking like, all right, we're gonna support Bernie and these progressives, and then once we lose, we're gonna bounce and we're gonna form a third party and we're gonna counteract the DNC. That did not happen. In fact, it was like 1% voted for Joe Stein in 2016. Less than 1%, it was like 0.3% Howie Hawkins in 2020. So I was naive in thinking that there was people in the Bernie movement that was actually serious about having this quote unquote political revolution. But Keaton, I think you want to chime in, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, first of all, when Kit mentioned about TYT had their candidate, I think it's important not to give them even more credit than they deserve, because TYT, if you recall, did not endorse Bernie Sanders until like the week before Iowa. And they were fence sitting in the 2020 primary between Bernie and Warren.
I did not know that.
Oh yeah.
I didn't come up through the TYT branch. I came up through the Tom Hartman. I listened through radio, and that was my route to this. CJ, so I didn't know that at all about that.
CJ, shortly after the primary, Cenk Uygur and Kyle Kulinski had a very serious conversation. They was having a debate, and Kyle Kulinski, he was debating why this wasn't post Super Tuesday. This was during the primary. And Kyle Kulinski was arguing why the left should support Bernie Sanders, and Cenk Uygur was ironically arguing why we should back Elizabeth Warren. It's a debate they had.
Yeah, no, they made a whole episode out of it. I believe it was January 2020. May have been December 2019, but I don't think so. I'm pretty sure it was January 2020, less than a month before the Iowa caucuses, where they made this big thing where Cenk endorses, drum roll, right? Because people didn't know. Anna
guys.
endorses, drum roll, right? I mean, they were fence sitting that whole time. That's number one. Number two, when we talk about how we were naive to think that Sanders had a shot, I think we have to be a little bit easier on ourselves. He did enter that contest a front runner. And so at the time, it was worth one more chance, right? I in retrospect, still don't believe that it wasn't worth that one more chance. Once you get to the quote unquote 5-yard line, as Jordan said, and they take it away, once you get to a point where they allow Mike Bloomberg to buy his way onto the debate stage, which was against the party rules, by the way. They broke the party rules to let him onto that stage. He entered that race because they became unconfident, should we say, that Biden could beat Sanders. That's why they let Bloomberg into that race.
Yep.
Once they did that, once the Iowa vote counting app broke, right? And then once Obama made that phone call and got Pete and Amy out of that race, and they took it from us when we thought we were on the 5-yard line. Past that point, there's no excuse. And past that point is when we said, okay, that's it. No more. No more, no more, no more. Exactly. And we were not bluffing. And some of the people who I'm sure we're going to talk about later, certain names come to mind. I will trust you guys to pull the video and audio if you want. Certain people talk to big game.
Keaton is always starting trouble. Keaton is always starting trouble.
Certain people talk to big game, and turns out they were bluffing. They did not have the follow through. If they had the follow through, they would not be uttering a word about Marianne Williamson or, I'm sorry, R.F. Kennedy Jr. I'm not a Kennedy Democrat. If you are, God bless you, not me.
People keep saying like, man, what do you think about RFK? Like, I know you don't like Marianne. Were you gonna support RFK? I'm like, bro, I'm not voting in the Democratic primary.
Exactly.
I'm not even wasting my time to vote.
Well, what I don't understand is it's almost like they weren't here for the discussion about us not doing this. Like, where did all these people who are now pushing, even some of the people who are some of the forefront of advocacy for this whole Marianne Williamson push, it was like you were here for the same conversations. You know how we were fed up and we were
well in there.
Like, what happened here?
And they're telling you up front that this is going to end with them telling you to vote for Biden, because if they were not going to do that, they'd say, yes, once they sabotage my campaign or I lose, whatever, I'm still going to be running. They would say that now, right? And then we'd be having a completely different conversation. RFK is already pulling the my good friend Joe shit.
And I can't stand that.
What are you, stuck on stupid? What part?
He has to be.
And don't you remember that with Bernie Sanders? No, I mean the people who beyond that point still want to support him. Don't you get it? Don't you remember that with Bernie? His good friend Joe, what do you have, amnesia from 2020? You don't.
No, we got people in our chat who start crying when we rag on RFK. It's like, I'm sorry, did you just wander into this show 3 days ago? We've been saying this for a couple of years at this point.
Well, I think also people are creatures of habit, and we have to remember that this is something a lot of Americans are heavily programmed into believing. They're believing into what they see in corporate media, and they want to try one more time to see if they could upset the establishment. And for many people, this is a fantasy, their dream to see if they could finally this time around get it right and show the Obamas, show the Clintons, show the Bidens. And and the thing is, I'm even trying to tell this to all these young people who are all infatuated with Marianne Williamson on TikTok. Guys, oh no, I've seen this happen before. Your lemmings going off the cliff. Yeah. Marianne Williamson and the RFK campaigns have not made an official statement of what would happen if the DNC commits the same kind of fraudulent behaviors that they did to the Bernie Sanders campaign in 2016 and 2020, how Tulsi Gabbard was horribly smeared. Like, we may not agree with everything what Tulsi Gabbard says, but she was unnecessarily dragged throughout the primaries and was the last woman standing, Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris. She was the last woman standing in the Democratic primaries, and yet her name was utterly devastated by the DNC. So the thing is, RFK, Marianne Williamson supporters, folks, you're in for a very rude awakening. And the Democrats have already said the key word that should be crap in your pants, and that is there's going to be no debates.
Yes,
Right.
and I want to interject this.
Go ahead.
We were just talking about this. If you guys haven't seen it, because he just tweeted this less than a week ago, RFK Jr. I have known and liked Joe Biden for many years. My good friend Joe.
Oh, God.
But we differ profoundly on fundamental issues as corporate influence and government, censorship, civil liberties, poverty, corruption, and war policy, among others. I look forward to engaging him in debates. You know he's not, though. Like, this is bullshit. So he leaves with, I have known and liked Joe Biden for many years. Guys, you know how I read this? He's throwing in the towel already. So the Biden administration has been smearing this guy as an anti-vax lunatic. They have been attacking him in the most aggressive, scumbag ways, right? Meanwhile, RFK, like, I like Joe Biden. As Joe Biden, just like what Bernie said, as Joe Biden was calling Bernie Sanders socialist, he's gonna destroy our party. Bernie, like, well, good friend Biden. The Biden campaign was like, Bernie Sanders will lose to Trump. We can't let Bernie win. If Bernie wins, Trump is gonna win. Meanwhile, they asked Bernie if Biden could beat Trump. He's like, yeah, I think Biden could beat Trump.
You don't need to vote for me. You can vote for my good friend Joe. Joe, I'm sure he can beat Biden. I just think we have some serious issues we need to discuss. But vote for who you
that's
like.
a really good one. That's a really good one. But were you going to say more about the thread, Nick, before I bring up this next part here?
I'll read it because I can't assume anyone's seen it. So I'll read the full tweet to be fair. He said, I'm a multi-generational Democrat. See, when you start that way, you lose me, guys. I'm sorry.
That's He's telling you how this is going to end.
Yes.
He's telling you up front.
When you say I'm a multi-generational Democrat, like, the Bill Clinton era was horrible. The Jimmy Carter era was horrible. What generation of Democrats are you okay with, sir? But I think our party have gone off track. Remember when we upheld the interests of the poor and middle class? No. I mean, once again, I think of the black working class because once again, we would never, ever take care of the Democratic Party ever. CJ, ever. Ever. Like New Deal shit. So I hear this shit is different for me. Like if you watch it, like when I hear people say, you remember when Democrats used to be pro worker? I'm like, when, motherfucker, when?
Well, you know,
go ahead, guys. Go ahead.
Well, there's something else too that I find very disturbing about this hype around RFK and Marianne Williamson, especially when it comes to outlets like, let's say, Kyle Kulinski or even I know a couple people like TYT and Brianna Joy Gray. They're all talking about, Marianne Williamson. They're trying to manufacture another Bernie Sanders moment, which will never happen again. Right. The DNC is going to make sure that doesn't happen. And what I see in many ways, and maybe I don't know, folks. Let's maybe I'm going to open up a can of worms here, but I can't help but think that the 5-letter word of more money for their channel is their incentive to try and hype up another candidate, because again, TYT made a huge killing in 2016 with the Bernie Sanders campaign, and then all the hype in 2022 to try and get that lightning in a bottle again. And the thing is, you guys have called it the professional managerial class, the leftist groups, the larger channels want to recreate that Bernie Sanders moment of, oh, hey, we got this exclusive interview with a presidential candidate. Oh, hey, donate to us and we'll make sure it happens. Give us $2 million and we'll have 4 horsemen of the apocalypse who do journalism in the field, which never happened. Money is the thing. And I fear that people are going to fall in line with that idea. And the thing is, who is the left and what is the current status of the left? It hasn't finished yet consuming itself to where it's destroyed, to where we can rebuild something. And you guys have coined it best, and I think this is the best strategy to use. I'm even going to call a good friend of the show, Roger Meadows, and that is starting building local chapters and communities, building on social movements and organizations not connected to Washington, D.C., supporting citizen ballot initiatives like Roger Meadows, and doing third parties or independents. And I've gotten some pushback from people who said, well, gee, I like this idea of third party, but I'm going to vote Republican. I'm going to vote Democrat because my state doesn't allow it. To which my counter is, then fight for it. Fight to make sure your state has citizen ballot initiatives. Fight to put third parties and independents on the debate stage, on the ballot, and fight to start building chapters. That's the difference that we should be doing now for this election cycle. Not saying, oh, DNC, RNC, we're going to cover these candidates. Break away from that. Start building your own thing. That's what people need to do. And it's going to be an arduous fight. We may not do it this election cycle, but let's start now building the groundwork for it. And RBN, I got to give you guys credit for it. That's what we need. Roger Meadows, citizen ballot initiatives. That's what we need.
I saw that on Sabby Show. He was on the Sabby Show, and I saw that stream. It's a really informative stream if people did not see that. Let me interject this for everybody. Election season, to your point, Kit, about some in the professional managerial class that overlaps with the Bernie Sanders industrial complex. Election season is money-making season.
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
So this is the push. It's like, what do you mean? There's no candidate. What are you talking about? Like, this is like my season's coming up, the NBA season, the NFL season, whatever season, you're a poker tournament. This is the season. It's like, we're canceling. What do you mean? This is where I make my money. This is where I make the bulk of the money. Imagine for those temporary Halloween costume stores, we're canceling Halloween.
You're right. Exactly.
What?
No costumes this year.
What?
Right.
No.
You canceling what? Halloween? No, we're not. We're not canceling. So that's the point, or that's I think what Kit was saying. The point of election season is money making season. The last time they had a large growth was during an election. The last, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you look at the Humanist Report, Beardless Humanist Report, that grew his channel 25,000, 50,000, and then another 25 during the year. And then the next election, another 75. You get what I'm saying? So they understand that election cycles, specifically those where we have a candidate, we're never going to meet that. It's like getting that first high. You're never gonna get that. You're never gonna get that high again.
Oh yeah.
And that's what the professional managerial class continuously is trying to do. And I'm using the drug kind of metaphor to be funny, but that's continuously what they're trying to do. Is just trying to keep freebasing. Oh, let me try to get to this maximum high, and it's never going to be.
And that's why they was cool. That's why they was cool with us off election year. Many of them been on our show talking about, we're done with electoralism. We done with the Democratic Party. They were saying that on off election years. And CJ, we talked behind the scenes many times. We see who's real with 2020.
Well, you remember Anna after they struck down Roe v. Wade actually had a moment of honesty. I'm done with the Democratic Party. They've been playing. It was the most honest she's been in years. They've been playing games. Yeah, they did. They did play games with Roe v. Wade. They did.
Now they did.
You see how quick she dropped that?
Now they say, I know I said that before, but we can't let fascism take over.
Can't let. I just today had a conversation with one of the few liberals who has not completely fled from all my feeds. God bless them. And yeah, it was funny because we were talking about this, and this is why it's important to have this kind of a conversation. Because, he said Biden was a decent man. I said, it's funny to me that so many of the people who are, liberals, or as we like to call them, the cowbell left, they really like to defend the idea of woke. These are the ones who will put up the meme. If woke means caring about people and having empathy, yes, that's what woke means. And they're the ones who will love to talk about privilege. When you describe Joe Biden, who started his campaign waxing nostalgic about how he worked with segregationists, and they never called him boy, they always called him son. This is recent. This is not 30 years ago. This is how he opened his last campaign.
Yeah.
If you're describing that as a decent man, that is an extremely privileged position. You have to be somebody who knows you're never going to jail because of that crime bill to describe this guy as decent. And if you have student loans that you need to discharge in bankruptcy that you can't because of him, that's just stupid that you'd be describing this person as a decent man. But this is why having this kind of conversation is important, because obviously this person more open-minded than the people who fled my page, or they would have fled my page a long time ago. and he asked me, no, he's a good guy. And he asked me like, okay, well, so what do we do? See, I have no answer for that. What's up?
I want you to finish, but they always throw that one out, right, CJ?
No, he was
but then what?
No, he wasn't asking it like that. He was serious. There's actually another guy in the conversation who was asking it like that, but he wasn't.
Okay.
And I said to him, I was like, listen, we need to figure that out. I'm looking at what Shama Sawant is doing. That looks promising. I think we need to support union movements in order to build that outside power to challenge the corrupt system. But civil disobedience, general strikes. But right now, this is what I would call the left as opposed to the liberals. It is the fragmented aftermath of the Sanders campaigns. And we need to figure out an answer to that question. Because look, so I have somebody, I proselytize to them, this whole system is fucked. What are we going to wait until they're telling us we have to vote for a guy like Trump because he's running against a guy like David Duke? How far are we going to let this go? We're already in a place where you're calling Joe Biden, a guy that Richard Nixon would have considered a dangerous right-wing nut job, a decent man. That's already how far right this whole thing is shifted. That Joe Biden, who would have been radically right compared to Richard Nixon. So what are you going to wait for? Are you going to wait until they're telling you to vote for somebody like Trump to stop somebody worse? Like, over the course of our lifetime, has it ever gotten better? No, it's only gotten worse. You've only gone right. So where do you stop? You have to stop somewhere. But then the question comes to me, okay, all right, I'm listening. So what next? We need an answer to that. We need an answer to that because, there's no point to convincing people. Okay, you convinced me. There's no more point to this. Now what? Sorry, man, I got to go.
I think people, and I've had CJ, I know you want to chime in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Electoral politics is a tranquilizing drug. You guys understand?
Yep.
So people, and when I said that earlier, I'm not saying that person was in bad faith. I get this stuff all the time. People that will admit you're right when you got such a solid foundational point, they will always throw their hand up, good faith or bad faith. They're like, okay, Russell, okay, Keaton, okay, Kit, you're right. Then what? I'm gonna show you guys a recent example of this, and this is how it always goes down. And my thesis is electoral politics is a tranquilizing drug because people want a hero. People don't want to put in the work. People don't want to accept the reality that we got a lot of work ahead of us in order to fight this corrupt system that we living through. So this is the story I wrote about. I'm gonna do a full segment on this soon, maybe on RBN Live tomorrow, on how this is the story they write every 2 years. Black voters frustrated with Joe Biden. So I made a point that Ice Cube was right, and I've been making the argument for years now that Black people need to establish their own self-determination, build a third party. Obviously, allies that want to help us, that will help us build an overall giant working class campaign, right? But you have someone who's good faith, as Russell brought up. This person is good faith. So they see my powerful point, like over 1,700 likes on that. And this person says, so what should these folks do? Because I'm talking about how Black people haven't been represented. So what should these folks do? You see how they always go with this. This person not bad faith, but they always go with it.
That's almost exactly the phrasing of the question I got. Almost exactly.
What should they do? Sit out the election, Russell? Who is the candidate they should support according to you? Look, this is how you know they're good faith. Generally curious. So that's why I responded. Right. Like, okay, this is the one who just want to know. Because before the Post-Duopoly leftist independent media channel like us, conversations never been had. Right? They probably heard Kyle Kulinski talk about it. So this is my response. I'm glad she was actually really receptive to it, right? But I said Black people need to establish their own self-determination. They want to set and build their party. So many are stuck on the plantation of the Democratic Party. And after that, this is where you see the tranquilizing drug kicks in. Because obviously a lot of people agree with that, but you can see the pushback I got, and this is it. This is the pushback I always get after I describe my theory of change. Third party is very hard, though.
Right.
You see it? Third party is very hard to do. They're like, yeah, I hear what you're saying. Yeah, you got a plan that's not going to allow us to waste our resources. I know it's going to take a lot of work, but it's hard. I want to leave.
What do they call this? Then what do they call this? What do they call what we're doing? Is this?
Okay.
I mean,
Let's.
Right.
it's hard, and we're not even getting any results. Go ahead, Kid. Or
And I mean, I'll pass to you guys, but I don't mean shit on
Yeah.
this person. Like, I'm not trying to shit on Big Rabbit here.
yeah.
I'm showing this tweet to show you guys how people are literally addicted to the tranquilizing drug
Right,
of
right.
electoralism. But go ahead, guys, if you guys want to chime in on
Okay,
that.
so first of all, let's dispel this notion of the idea that third parties don't work. Okay, we've seen them work in other democracies. Number two, third parties have won here in the United States. Yes, there's been local elections, and yes, Jesse Ventura was his governor's election. There's been a lot of incidences where, again, a third party or a political organization like Social Alternative have been successful. But let's just rewind back the clocks further to a presidential election cycle where a third party won. Yeah, you might know them. It's called the Republican Party. There used to be another party here called the Whigs until the Republican Party took over. They were a third party. Hell, they were a radical party. At least in their era, they were, because what they wanted, abolition of slavery. Okay, there we go. Just keeping it very simple here with the then Republican Party under Abe Lincoln. So there was a lot of people saying that party can't succeed. Lincoln can't succeed. Let's also bring up Theodore Roosevelt. Now, even though he gave up on the Bull Moose Party, he was a force to be reckoned with. Let's also look at the fact of, again, they're not perfect individuals, but Ross Perot and my oh my, were people laughing at him when he made that vacuum noise. People aren't laughing now because he hit the nail on the head. And then, of course, you have Ralph Nader. And if you want to extend it further, Dr. Jill Stein and Gary Johnson of 2016. Gary Johnson of the Libertarian Party, Dr. Jill Stein of the Green Party. So third parties can be done and they are effectual. But the thing is, now they've been vilified to the point of where saying it can't be done. It's impossible. And the reason why it can't be done is because the Democratic Party and Republican Party have built laws at the state level and at the federal level that prevent third parties from being on the debate stage with the help of corporate media that spew out that propaganda. And I've said this before, same people donate to the DNC, donate to the RNC. So the people who control Democrats and Republicans also control the media. George Carlin was right. It is one big club and you ain't in it. So there's a narrative being spewed down to people. So what do we do going forward? It's simple, and I'm prepared to get pushback for this statement here because it's not easy to digest. Number one, okay, I mentioned what RBN is doing. Let's bring up Rome and the fact he's building this library. We're going to have to start building small and start building foundation now. I don't think we're going to have that big revolutionary moment where, oh, we get the president who's going to bring in everything and it's rainbows and sunshine. That's not happening. Build the movements now. Build the organizations now. Break away now. And it's got to start off small. And we're not going to have a lot of people here with us. We are going to be alone. We're going to be vilified. And unfortunately, for there to be things to change, there isn't enough blood in the street. The system has to choke on itself. We are Byzantium. We are the Byzantine Empire. We're not the Roman Empire. We're dying a slow old man's death of stagnation. And in order for there to be change, the people have to learn it the hard way. And it isn't the first time a nation or people have come to terms that their nation, their rulers are purposely failing them.
Yes.
So
well, yeah,
I'm
but
sorry.
look, I mean, the
it's got to happen.
Yes, sure thing. And, you know, I hear you. We all hear you. I think that all makes sense to us. To sell that person that Nick was going back and forth with on that, to sell whoever Russell was going back and forth with on that, it's a really, really tough sell. It's a really tough sell because they want. Sorry, go ahead.
I want to finish the story because there's,
okay, go ahead.
I'm gonna explain why, because I think you're making a point, and I want to show you this before you finish it. This is why it's important to have these conversations, because this person in this conversation, as I mentioned before, was I think was asking in good faith. Now, this person, after I'll show you guys the person who was like, "Oh my God, that's impossible," right? Now, this person also kind of had that same reflex, but he said, "I agree. Though it's hard to motivate folks not to be afraid of even more chaos in the short term, but yeah, agree." So why am I pointing this out? And I'll pass to you, Ken. I'm sorry I interrupted.
No, that's okay.
But the reason I'm pointing this out is this person say, "I agree. It's going to be hard, but I agree." So what did that tell you? That means this person knows, and people inherently want a third party. They just need these strategies reaffirmed to them. And then you got to get them to get over the hump, the fact that it's hard. Now, this is why I say people like Crystal Ball, Kyle Kulinski, and Mike Figueredo, they're actually the biggest obstacles to third parties. They think that the system being rigged is No, they are. Because we need to plant the idea. It's not going to work on the first time. We mentioned third parties. Like, damn, what? Then we mention it again. Damn, that's going to be hard, brother. Then we mention it again. All right, I'm down. But they cut that process off. So we say we need to get a third party. They're like, okay, shit, okay, that's crazy. Is that possible? Then they come in, they scoop in and say, no, it's not possible. No, you gotta drop these revolutionary thoughts.
That's exactly what they do.
Because as third party activists, when we say the reason why third parties don't win is because you guys don't support them, it really is that simple. It's quite literally that simple. Like if people would just drop that shit and get to work, we would be there. If there wasn't crystals and people halfway there scaring people like this person off, they would be there. I promise you, this person saw a Kyle Kulinski or anti-third party spill that made them hesitate. And now they see my argument, they like, and then we got to start over. Like these people that gatekeep third parties are hurting us. But
let's go to Keaton and then I'll chime in. Yeah, I'll go to Keaton first.
These people want instant gratification. The media, whether it's indie YouTube media or corporate media, sells instant gratification, right? There always has to be a plan. If you don't have a plan that can work right now, we don't want to hear it. Because a third party is not viable right now, we don't want to hear it. We don't have time for that, right? I think it's very important, and this is, what I talk about quite a bit, and I don't say it to black pill people. I don't say it to make people miserable or nihilistic. I say it because I think it's true and I think it could be helpful. These people who we're arguing with, they need to sit with their despair for a minute. They need to just look into the void for a minute. It's very important that they do that. It really is important. And it's not, I'm not trying to depress people. They need to understand what they're doing is failing and that this movement is failing. The left is failing. And that we don't exactly know what comes tomorrow. We don't know what to do right now. People need to sit with that for a second and just chill the fuck out with that idea. I'm sorry to mimic Marianne Williamson and get all spiritual on everybody here, right?
Well, there's a difference when you do it and when she says it, okay? You actually mean it.
But that's important.
Not so much.
Like, it's really, really important. Because the alternative is to bullshit yourself and chase the next dopamine high, chase the next sugar rush. Marianne, RFK, what's Kyle got to say to me about Oh, Marianne's on TikTok, that's great. Okay, these all crumble into nothing. You have to be willing to acknowledge that we're failing, we're in shambles, and we don't know what comes immediately next. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing nihilistic or depressing about that. That's a necessary step, because out of that, you have a think, and we get to talk about, okay, what exactly do we want to do? Where do we want to take this? What can come next? Because right now, without that moment of just pause, because these people don't pause. Social media is all about like, share, retweet. Oh, you pissed me off. Fuck you. Yeah. It's all going so frantically.
Blocked.
Blocked, muted, right, exactly. It's all just this. It's just so fast-paced. People do not think about where they are. Where are we?
This is such a good setup, and I will let you read that super chat in a second, Nick, because what you're describing, I've written that down, and let me explain. If you have a bad spouse, do you need a new spouse before you leave your spouse?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Or do you just leave your spouse and say, I'll figure that shit out later?
Exactly.
Why do you need to know a destination before you say, I'm getting out of this shit? Right. Why do you need a destination? You just know I need to remove myself from this, regardless of what the next step is. But that is a way. I don't know what type of tactic. I don't know if we can link that back to one of the CIA infiltration, but it's a tactic of like logic that a person who is saying, I don't like the status quo, then you come in and go, what are you going to do? And that person doesn't have it. It's like, damn, that is true. At least I have this garbage I can deal with. If I don't, you get what I'm saying? It's like, but if a person sits and think, or they talk to Nick, or they talk to one of us, like Nick example, in the tweet, then when they hear other people say, yeah, but that doesn't matter. And they hear these sort of reinforced. And that's why I think what we do, all of us on here, is such an important point. And then another point I wanted to make here is I forget, but I do want to get to some of the video content. I'll let you chime in, Nick, and then we'll get to some of the video
I want
content.
to take a quick.
Yeah, there's something I want to add to what CJ said here too. But go
Yeah,
ahead.
go
I didn't
ahead.
interrupt.
Go ahead. You chime in.
Okay,
and then
so-
after you,
so-
I'll do a quick super chat break. But go ahead,
Yeah.
First of all, CJ, you hit the nail on the head, especially in regards towards how voters or people involved in the political system view the system. Like, where do I go? I'm with an abusive partner. I'm with a cheater. Do I stay and fix it? Do I find somebody better? Do I leave and be on my own? That's frightening. And for a lot of Americans, we are conditioned to think that way. To quote Jimmy Dore, we are the children of alcoholics. A lot of us have been in abusive relationships. A lot of us want to hope that our partner will care for us. A lot of us want to think that if we just stick it out and rough it out, we'll make it. If we work real hard, the ridiculous puritanical logic, fuck you, pilgrims. But again, that ridiculous puritanical logic that was here in this country that's been drilled into us, we're supposed to keep on struggling, stay on the course, and it will get better. That's not the case. It takes a lot of courage to break away from an alcoholic family or an abusive partner or a cheater. It takes a lot of courage to say to people, I will not participate in the two-party system. I got a private message in 2016 from a good friend of mine who was very upset that I was voting for Dr. Jill Stein. And they wrote to me, they sent me an article, The Rise of Hate Groups and the Ku Klux Klan is leading the way of Trump. Yeah. And this person said in the message, by voting for Dr. Jill Stein, you are supporting this. And I'm like, first of all, no. I wrote a very detailed message like, how dare you think that I would support the Ku Klux Klan? How dare you think I would support any of these groups? Don't message me again until you're ready to be an adult. And they actually got back to me 3 weeks later and apologized, said, wow, you were right. Hillary Clinton did run a horrible campaign, but what do we do next? I couldn't see myself voting against her. And that's the problem. A vast majority of our citizens really are afraid to get off that path of vote Democrat, vote Republican. We are
electoral realism,
yes.
Electoral realism, just like capitalist realism.
Go ahead. Go ahead. The strategy these two-party duopolist propaganda pin to people. They told Kit that he's a racist KKK supporter for not supporting Hillary Clinton, one of the most anti-black politicians in the modern era. And then that's the tactic they use on white leftists. And then I was called Uncle Tom. I was called self-hating. So if you're white and you don't vote Democrat because you're a racist KKK member, if you're black and you don't vote Democrat because I'm not really black and because I'm Uncle Tom, you guys see how they use the scumbag tactics like that, right? Now I'm gonna get to key point. I'm gonna get to some super chats because I love how you put it. We got sit with despair, and that's how people need to do that. People don't realize that I told the story a long time ago. I explained the story many times because I quit my job to work on the Bernie campaign the second time because I didn't do anything the first campaign, and I was like, I'm gonna do everything I can the second campaign. Quit my job, worked on the campaign for 8 weeks. I was in Iowa, worked in Missouri. I was in South Carolina for 5 weeks. A lot of time and labor I really wish I didn't spend. But after that, I was so invested, and I knew what was to come. Obviously, there's a Joe Biden administration, and there's a Trump administration. I knew we would fuck. I knew at that point we had to do a long game where we engaged in, I knew what was coming. So after Super Tuesday, I was in despair, and this is when I grew. Like my Twitter, I had like 15,000 followers on Twitter. I grew to 50K that in 6 months. Because I was just rage tweeting. I was very open about it. I was like, this is not political analysis. This is me coping. I was looking into despair. What King said. I had no idea what the fuck I was going to do. I literally started reading theory more. I told you guys all the time. I read more theory. It became more of a militant Marxist after I saw the failures of social democrat strategy.
You were liberated, I would argue, in that. And I felt the exact same thing in that. Once that Bernie campaign failed, there was no longer reason to play ball with the fucking scumbag shitlib Democrats. You can go do your own thing. You could read theory now. You could actually educate yourself now and educate others the way you want them to be educated, not trying to sneak in this 2-inch backdoor opening that Bernie tried to sneak in that campaign, right? Like, we had to run that campaign on the Democrats' terms. That's why Bernie couldn't say shit about Russiagate, couldn't say shit about the impeachment bullshit, right? Because he had to win over the cowbell-waving morons, right? Once that fails, you don't have to do that anymore. And that's a very freeing thing that allows you the space to, as you just said, Nick, you sit with that feeling of hopelessness and you communicate that honestly, and look how people responded when you were honest with them. Look how your following tripled, right? Not only did your following triple, but you were able to now create something on your own terms, not on the Democratic Party's terms. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, it's okay.
That was an
And you
important
guess that's a
thing to
great
mention.
point. And I'm putting this tweet because look at the date. This September 2020. Because when Bernie lost, I talk about my divorce with the Bernie left all the time. I was friends with all the people on TYT. They would never tell you this, but they all used to follow me. I'll show you guys. The majority of Report channel used to follow me. Ben Dixon used to support. Like he literally donated to my Patreon one time. Like the people used to love me because I was part of the Bernie campaign, and I was telling people that we shouldn't support Joe Biden. We need to double down and shift further to the left. So Bernie was the compromise. So this thing where people said, and Keaton and do dissonance, you guys did a great job breaking this down. Where people were like, well, I know Marianne Williamson isn't Bernie. Fuck you talking about? Bernie was a compromise.
Right, exactly.
How you expecting less than that? So my argument I was making to Bernie people, so
I know she's not quite as good as the guy who pussied out in April and endorsed the nominee. I know she's not as good as him, but we should give her a shot anyway, right?
All right. The beginning of my red pilling, because I worked really hard for him in 2016. And me and my wife at the time, we went to Massachusetts. And I was knocking on doors telling people, yeah, if Bernie is not the nominee, Trump's going to be your president. They laughed at me, so you know how that went. But if you remember, I don't know if you remember. This is very forgotten bit of history. They let Bill Clinton campaign inside voting stations in Massachusetts
and in Illinois.
And when it was brought up, the DNC argued, well, he wasn't wearing flair, so he wasn't campaigning. Motherfucker, Bill Clinton's face is flair for Hillary Clinton. What are you talking about? That was what they argued. That was the beginning of my getting red-pilled. That was when I was like, hang on. I thought the Democrats were the good guys. And you know what? As much as I was invested in Bernie, I knew at that moment. I turned to her. I said, they're never going to let him win. They're never going to let him win. If they'll do that, they're just going to keep doing that. They're going to keep doing that through the whole thing.
And how is that not the conclusion that everyone makes there? And that's why in a tweet.
That's why in 2020 I donated on general principles. I gave him like a monthly contribution. I didn't phone call. I didn't volunteer. I didn't work for him because I knew they wouldn't let him win. I knew one way or the other, by hook or by crook, after what I saw in 2016, they simply will not let this man become the nominee, because in the end, this is a private club that is about making money for its insiders and its members. It doesn't have anything to do with politics, really. This is essentially a criminal enterprise where these people are all shuffling money around. They're hitting all your cultural signaling to get you to donate to them. And then they're using that to pay their arms dealer friends to start wars, to pay off their consultants. That's it. That's what this is. That's what, when I see people now crying, they're not going to have a debate. That is really like a child of an alcoholic to me.
Yeah.
You're not being fair. Oh, you get it? You get it now? Yes, they're not being fair. Why would they be? What's in it for them?
Exactly.
Like what? They're gonna have a come to Jesus moment? Oh, you know what? I think it's really unfair that we're not having primaries. You know what? Let's have a primary with the Topanga Canyon hippie and the conspiracy theorists. Let's put them on.
Don't worry, we're gonna let you guys
stage.
take our power. We're gonna let you guys take our power. No struggle needed. Like,
you know what? You really got through to us. Like, what do you think is going on here? This is just a private club whose sole purpose is to stuff money into the pockets of its members. That's it. Once you understand that, there are Von Clausewitz, there are no contradictions. When you think you found a contradiction, check your premises. The Democratic Party doesn't behave like a political party trying to accomplish anything. Well, that's not an accident. That's not a contradiction. That's not a bug. That's a feature. That's a feature. The purpose is to make money for its members. And you fucking idiot, when you give them money, they stuff it into the pockets of their consultants. Why do you think they don't fire all these consultants when they lose all these elections? Because that's their buddies. The whole thing is a make work program for party insiders, just like the inner circle of any kind of corrupt organization. You're dealing with the mob, and you go into the mob and saying, you know what? I think you should stop breaking legs. They're not going to. This is their business. This is what they do.
All right, so I'm gonna show this because this is the point I was making of how after Super Tuesday we should have doubled down and shifted further to the left instead of becoming Democrat PR agents like they have. And this is the tweet I sent out September 2020, and this is when I was done. I was so disheartened, but see what, because that's when I was coming to the realization like, oh, this shit was fake. This shit wasn't real because I saw people. Like, and I told you guys before, if you was voting for Biden and you disagree with me on that, I think there is a bit more dignified way to do it than a lot of people was doing. There was people in August, in June, months before the election, like, don't worry, guys, I'm all for Biden. I know I'm disappointed with the Democratic Party, but I'm all for Joe Biden. I was seeing people I follow, big accounts doing this shit, and they will go viral all the time because then liberals be like, oh, see, this is one of the good ones. See, they understand how important this is. You guys remember there was this fucking curse period on Twitter where all the leftists just bit the news. Like,
the witching period. The witching period.
Like, if you guys were on Twitter post Super Tuesday, you guys know the fuck up. It was the most cursed period of Twitter ever. Where all you saw leftists one by one, and they were declaring it like almost like they had to come out. Like like they're coming out. I'm coming out as a Democrat. They're like, yeah, we got them. But anyway, I'll get to my point because this is my tweet. I said I honestly thought and this is how naive I used to be. I honestly thought if Bernie lost again, especially with DNC fuckery, which we saw, that progressives would double down and become more anti-establishment. Sucks, I was wrong.
You know, here's the thing. I think a lot of people suffer from Trump derangement syndrome, and they want to turn Trump into this big bad boogeyman. Look, just my opinion, I think he's been the most transparent president we've ever had. He told us why we were in Syria. We're there for the oil. In the first Republican primary debate, in the first, well, what? No, George Bush Sr., a George Bush Jr., a Ronald Reagan, a Bill Clinton, Obama said, we're there for freedom, nation building, and helping out the poor people there. No, Trump said, hey, we're there for the oil. Trump said it in the first Republican primary debate when money in politics was brought up. He said this, I give these people money and they do what I say. Most transparent moment in American history ever. He gave away the sauce. He gave away the secret sauce to the American people. And just to remind all the diehard vote blue no matter who, Trump used to be a Democrat. And when he gave money to people in the DNC, they did what he said too, including a little old senator named Hillary Rodham Clinton of New York. People forget that. People forget that they're friends. People forget that Hillary Clinton was a Goldwater girl. You see, people are trained to be in these abusive relationships. People are trained to be subservient to a two-party system. And people have to learn the lesson the hard way. It's not only do they have to despair, but again, we have to see the suffering in the street to where people say, okay, this cannot go on. AOC can make a good tweet, but it's not going to feed my family or make my life better. Marjorie Taylor Greene, okay, I guess she believes in Christian values, but boy, oh boy, is she making a lot of money with that insider trading, which is what she's goddamn doing. All these politicians are scumbags, and we cannot treat them like people anymore. We cannot treat them in hoping that they will be that knight on the hill. In 2016, at the Wells Fargo Center, Daniel Lupker and myself, when we were just getting started, before even Hardlands Media came into existence, we went inside the Wells Fargo Center. I saw what happened to Bernie Sanders supporters and delegates and Green Party people, how they were being assaulted and spit on by Hillary Clinton people. I spoke to Bernie Sanders delegates on how the men and women were being assaulted, harassed, getting threatening phone calls, how the women were harassed, okay? So in other words, maybe that should have been my wake-up call. Like, geez, if Bernie Sanders isn't going to fight for his people, he's not going to fight for us at all. But I had the audacity to hope to think that it would happen. Maybe that would not happen in 2020. Maybe 2016 was just that rough up fight like Rocky 1 and he'll win like Rocky 2 did. And no, that's not going to happen because that's a fantasy, because we built these politicians up into people that they are not. They are not these individuals that care because they don't like us. They don't think about us, and they don't respect us. As Bernie Sanders cared about his people, he would have fought for his people. And I'm going to make a controversial statement here. At least Trump fought for his people. However, which way you want to take
this point.
Yeah, at least up to this point. But then also, number two, if we look at the Republican primaries, especially in 2016, he was more democratically elected in that primary in 2016 than Hillary Clinton was, because the DNC have the ultimate cheat card, and that is called the super goddamn delegate. And the super delegates dictate who becomes the nominee.
Kit, to your point, just real quick.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys saw the meltdown. Liberals been melting down for months over this. Marjorie Taylor Greene met with the January 6th protesters. Trump gave a hug, apparently, to this person that called for the execution of Mike Pence, and the liberals are melting down over it. Now, why am I bringing this up? I bring this up because remember what Kit just said. Kit, can you imagine Bernie Sanders or the squad showing up to indigenous protesters who got their head beat in by the Capitol Police? They didn't show up.
No, they're never going to do that.
Can you imagine them showing up for people who are victims of state violence because they were resisting the empire the way that Trump and the Republicans do for January 6th protesters? Liberals look at that and they are horrified. Like, how dare you show support for people who had a weak fucking uprising, but people who descended against the state? Bernie and them would never do that. In fact, Bernie will accuse us of being a Russian puppets.
I got to give you a pushback. Actually, I could think of one example where two progressives actually went and stood side by side in solidarity with indigenous protesters, and that is Dr. Jill Stein and John Mubraka of the Green Party campaign for the Dakota Access Pipeline protesters, the people who were standing against it. They showed the courage to say something and do something, and were actually there with the protesters. At least that's what it looks like. But even then, they were condemned by liberals by saying, "How dare those two show up there?" Obama's got it covered.
Maxwell Frost infiltrated Palestinian communities and claimed he supported a one-state solution, claimed he supported BDS. And as soon as he won his primary, he like, lose my number. I don't want anything to do with you. And that's the person that AOC on primetime, Jen Psaki, she praises that behavior. So they will abandon their grassroots while they get in power. Meanwhile, Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene, while we find detestable, and this is why there's some envy on the left, because at least they go into bat for their people, and then the liberals melting down. They're like, we don't give a fuck. Those are homies.
Well, I always think of the scene in Apocalypse Now when I look at the January 6th people, where he says, "Give me 2 divisions of such men, and our problems here will be over very quickly." He's talking about the Vietnam. When I look at the January 6th people, I'm like, give the left people like that. Yeah. And we will take care of our problems very quickly. And at one time, we did have people like that. Go ahead, Kip.
So yeah, well, there's only one thing that really upsets me about the January 6th, especially one photograph in particular, where this one dude's in Nancy Pelosi's office. His arms are laid back. Her laptop's right there. I'm like, dude, I almost feel like Walter White yelling at Jesse. Like, her laptop was right there. You could have took it, and who knows what kind of information was on there. It was open, and you know these old people don't have passwords or protection on it. It was right there. You could have took it. Why didn't you do it? Honestly, just give me 10 good men, and we could have easily done. If I knew what was going to happen, I'd be, all right, guys, just pretend, put on a MAGA hat. We're going to raid these offices. Let's go find out what's in here, and then we jump out and dodge. We get out. Simple.
Let's take a quick break. We can go all day. This is a very fun.
Yeah,
I'm gonna take. We can take a super chat break, and now pass it to CJ to get to our next part, because we can banner all night.
This is literally that was our introduction. That was just our introduction. Wow. We could just go that long, and we're cutting it short. But go ahead, Nick. Let's read some super chat.
So I don't mean cut it off, but man, we can banner like a motherfucker. Thank you for $2. John Post-Duopoly, and that's the mindset we need to be. When I was promoting this on Twitter, I said that and this is what made people uncomfortable with RBN. Like, we need to be militantly like post two-party duopoly. Like if you support Democrats, you're betraying our movement. You siphoning resources that otherwise go to our movement. And for so long, and I am going based on the data, third-party movements have failed, like nationally, right? Because third party's been too lenient. Like third party, like Green Party people, libertarian people, like, yeah, it's okay, you vote Republican. Yeah, it's all right, I get it. No, we need to stop that shit. We got like, you with us or you not? You with? We need to draw that line, and people are not used to drawing that line. People think, oh yeah, I vote Democrat. You support your little third party thing, small disagreement. No, they're not small disagreement no more. How about that? Anyway, let me move on. Thank you for $2. Cortez, I could get used to this. Yeah, once again, very fun show. Thank you for $20. Tusker. This is the leftist collab we deserve. Thank guys for doing this. I don't know, man. I prefer the leftist mafia where we just talk about the culture war of mafia. That's what it really is. Anyway, thank you for $5.
Talk about Anna's uterus.
Yeah, right.
How dare you? How dare you?
Don't you guys know Matt Taibbi's the worst? Okay, we're gonna do a whole panel talking about how Matt Taibbi's the absolute worst.
He used to be so great.
What happened to him and Glenn? Actually, like Glenn and them, they used to be cool, but now they became such deadly right wingers because they call
so right wing.
Yeah, against the war machine in Ukraine, fucking right wingers.
I just want everybody to know I'm not paying the $8 for the blue check. I want everybody to know. It's very important that everybody knows.
I don't know why the blue check is on there.
I don't know why it's on there. I just want everybody to know I'm not paying for it.
Dude, Matt Binder, one of the people on the leftist mafia, if you look at his Twitter feed, that's all that motherfucker tweets about.
Is the blue check really?
Yeah, that
really. I did not know that. I did not know
he got Elon Musk derangement syndrome worse than I had ever seen. That's the struggle. Them resisting the $8 blue check on Twitter. That's the biggest struggle.
That's they're his Joe Biden. Like Elon is their Joe Biden.
Elon is Joe Biden.
Yes, that's their Joe Biden.
Yeah, right.
All right, let me get to the super chats, man. You guys always leave thought-provoking super chats, so always spiral to something else. Thank you for $5, Janice. It's likely state Dem party apparatuses will cancel primaries and caucuses. Yeah, 100%. If RFK and Marianne Williamson start polling higher than Biden, imagine if there was like this massive RFK and Marianne Wilson, and they saw that he's like 50%. They're like, "Nah, we're not doing this shit." I 100% think that would happen.
They could do that. They could easily do that. The DNC admitted that they'll pick who they want.
Right. They win in court and Senate. I mean, that should be game over. If you don't Dem exit at that point, just don't know what you're thinking.
Dude, Democrats
they'll make a rule that only the vaccinated can vote in the primary, and that'll be the end of RFK. That'll be it for him. Curtains for him. You have to show your passport to
They are literally calling him a lunatic in the media. Like on CNN, they're using the words lunatic, like half-baked.
Right.
They're using his words about him, which is just crazy.
And censoring him too. They're censoring any interviews with him. So like ABC did that. Not the first time ABC censored news.
I think it's interesting though, because I told you guys all the time, listen to how puppets of our empire talk about their enemies, and that's how we should talk about our politicians. That's like when you hear them talk about the way they speak about Putin. That's the way I have disdain for Obama. That's where I have disdain for Joe Biden. And I know it's a simple concept for us to understand, but I talk to one of these NATO leftists when they don't understand why I refuse to vote for Jim Crow Joe. Ask them this question if you guys haven't done this. It's always fun to do. Ask them, if Vladimir Putin was on the ballot today running against Trump, would you vote for him?
That's a good one.
Would you vote for him? Would you vote for Putin? He's like, no, we'll never vote for Putin. He's a war criminal. But you vote for Joe Biden, though.
That's like if God is all powerful, can he make a stone? He himself cannot lift for liberals.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Well, so if you refuse, as many people in the NATO left would, we all know they would never vote for Putin because he's a war criminal, but you vote for Joe Biden because he's a war criminal. What's up with that? What's up with that inconsistency? I am more angry at our politicians than I am others. And you see how they speak about RFK? Why don't they speak about their enemies like that? They talk about Lindsey Graham. They talk about Kevin McCarthy. Morning Joe doesn't talk about Kevin McCarthy the way they talk about RFK. But apparently he's getting our nemesis, right? So that's how we should talk about him. Anyway, let me get to the next super chat.
I mean, we do.
Great point. I need to stop ranting. Thank you for $10. Bennett, can they pass the joint to the guys and the other topics? We already talked about me and CJ. We're gonna do Nick and CJ show live from in California one day.
Yeah. Oh, that'll be nice.
That's definitely in the cards for sometime this year. Zoya, I don't know. I don't want to spoil anything, but this.
Yeah. Don't spoil it. Yeah, don't spoil it. Yeah. It'll be nice though.
I don't know the time when I can actually pass it to CJ live. That's gonna be a milestone. You guys saw with Rome. Like Rome was here when we did tour for the Forecast City. That was a legendary experience. When we do Nick and CJ live, and you guys can see me physically pass it to CJ, that's gonna be a big moment for our community. Anyway, we've got a few more here. Thank you for $10, Franklin. And then after we get through super chats, I'll pass to you, CJ.
Yeah, we'll get into some of the video content right here.
Yeah, thank you for $10, Franklin.
Yeah, I think she's off the air in 3 minutes, right? Because it was an hour.
Yeah, I've been watching it. That's what I keep flipping over to
because
make sure
the podcast was an hour 16, so it's got to be.
Yeah,
it's gotta be done
I'm watching
soon.
it. So we're doing the same thing right now.
Who's that?
Minutes. They're like at an hour and 14 minutes right now.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Go ahead, Nick. Go ahead.
What are you guys talking about? I'm missing it.
Because we're gonna cover the bad faith interview with Margaret Kimberly because they talk about there's a section about it where they talk about what we're talking about tonight, which is the left.
All right, sounds good.
We're gonna interject that here.
Yeah, and somebody.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I just didn't mean to interject, but Bad Cookies, I'm calling you out here, buddy. I don't think Kit smokes weed. Listen, if there was going to be smoking weed here, I would have had my pipe already ready to go ahead and start smoking it right here with my torch and everything else. But yes, I do like some Japanese whiskey too. Hell, I'd have both right here, but I didn't know that was going to be that kind of party. So now my feelings are kind of hurt.
We never really have a party. It's just that just kind of do it in the background as drinking water. It's not really at the forefront. So, but any more super chats, Nick?
A few more, and then big shout out to Rome.
Okay. That was Rome right there.
Yeah, we killed it in Kansas. Like, you guys saw what we did in Kansas City. Like that was very energizing. Anyway, I thought like it's very energizing to bring the community the way we did. Like we gave away thousands of diapers. Like it was crazy. We did not expect that. We didn't expect that, but I put the word out, and it was a big event. We killed it. We did a live stream as well. Nick and Rome live. If you guys missed it, that was definitely fire. We're gonna do that. I want to do that at least for every RBN member at one point. I got Rome down. Nick and CJ live is gonna be pretty lit. I think I left off at Franklin. I was gonna make sure I'll give Rome a shout out. Thank you for $10. It's almost like you're saying Crystal and Cal equal to white moderate. And this is the point that I say that really got me blocked by so many people. Because I'm like, bro, I feel like so many of y'all misinterpreted what Malcolm X said. You got to realize that Joe Biden is not who he's talking about, right? Joe Biden is the enemy.
Yeah, right. Yeah. He's the wolf.
Great people will say, you guys know Joe Biden is the white martyr. No, the fuck he's not. He's There's no distinction here. He's the enemy. The white moderate are you progressive fuck who want us to abandon black radicalism, want us to be lured by the tranquilizing drug of incrementalism. There was white leftists like Voss who told me to my face that black people should vote for their oppressors. But you guys think that Biden is the white moderate? No, it's the full white progressives that tell black people that they should vote for their oppressors. That is 100% okay with calling Candace Owens a coon to her face because she disagrees with our politics. These are the people that Malcolm X was talking about. They don't have our best interests at heart. They were trying to advance their own political agenda. They want Medicare for all. They want something for them. So we need to give up our radicalism in order to implement incrementalism. Anyway, I can rant all day on that. Anyway, that's exactly who the white
is. Was that the last one? Oh no, one more.
Damn, they keep coming. Thank you for the $10, Rob. Yes, I'll speed up a little bit here. Yes, do you need a whole new furnished house to run before? Yeah, this is on the point that CJ made earlier.
Yeah.
Do you need a whole new furnished house to run before you leave the burning house? That's about to kill you.
Right.
That's a great point.
You guys are very thought provoking, but I need to get through them. I appreciate all the support. Thank you for the $5 GV Black. Double check. You like the video. Appreciate the solidarity and support. Thank you for the $5, Arthur. Don't forget the lawsuit where the DNC argued that they, as a private org, can select who they want. You guys say, CJ, we say all the time our audience is based. They know. They're not falling for this.
They know, yeah.
They know. We need to reach more people. Our audience is based as hell. They already know. Thank you for 1999, Corey. The only thing we needed more than this podcast was a new book show for Russell.
Hey, man, we just did another vote last night. Every time we do a vote, people want me to leave it the way it is. More people want me to leave it the way it is.
All right, last one. Thank you for 499. Black Freud. Oh, you mentioned your name of Freud. I believe you told me it was.
Freud, yeah.
All my faves in one place. Thank you for the courage, the truth, and the laughter. This is much more enjoyable stream than the one we did earlier, but we covered the Pendleton too. It's a story that must be had. It's a very traumatic story, man. These people fucking are being tortured by our state. Like, bro, like we both turned our camera off multiple times. Like, that's a hard story to get through. Can't like that shit need to be covered, but man, functions like these really help alleviate the soul after that. Fucking that shit like, you guys, that's trauma. Like, when I report on that kind of stuff, that shit fucks me up. It really
I have
does.
to watch that. I didn't watch that earlier.
Yeah. Thank you. This is Anthony Malechik. Anybody can help me? Maliki. Sorry. And thank you for a brand new member. Are you taking off, sweetheart? My girl's going to gymnastic. You okay? You been crying?
Yeah.
You been crying?
No, she hasn't been crying.
You don't talk on the camera. I thought she leaned in like she was gonna talk, and I was like, "Oh, you don't have to lean in." But anyway,
we done. We done. By the way, that's all for now. If any other super chats come in, we get them at the end of the show.
Yeah.
And by the way,
thank you, brand new members,
by being members. Big shout out to Anthony as well. Go ahead, CJ.
Yeah. So let's get into some content. So the goal is to touch upon two sort of video content. The final being the Bad Faith podcast, and they're all poignant points. We're not just watching the whole thing. I have them particular points to watch, but where I do want to start, gentlemen, is with it the Shama? It's another Bad Faith. I think I'll go here to start with. It's another Bad Faith. Where is it? Shama and yeah, it's in my bookmark. Sorry, everybody. But it's when Shama appeared a while ago. So this is not a recent appearance, and I just happened to stumble upon it when researching the show. But I did want to start here before I get with the video, and this is the headline: if there is to be a future for the left, we must break with Sanders and the Democratic Party. And I'll read the snippet here from this article. Generation Z activists are leading marches against racism and demanding to change everything, rejecting de facto the politics of the two-party system and providing new momentum for the left. But a sector of socialists insist on looping back to the politics of moderate reform. In particular, Jacobin magazine keeps spouting articles praising Bernie Sanders like a broken record, while Bernie in turn is campaigning for Joe Biden. Now, this is my first question before I play the Shama Sawant video. Do we feel that the Bernie Sanders industrial complex influence is fading? And like, what is the result of the Bernie Sanders industrial complex? What can they do? Like, maybe they're asking themselves this, but what other possible things could they do? It's kind of a rhetorical question. So now let's get to the video, because what Shama does in this video, Jim, that I'm sure some of you have seen it, and I'm going to get back to the other one too. She breaks down the squad, the whole progressive strategy in this video, which is why to me it's telling, and I want to get into that part of the conversation. Okay, here we go. Right here, it's probably the first 4 minutes of it we're going to listen to. Now, I can't see you guys, so if you want me to stop it at any point, just let me know. Give me a verbal cue. I can't see you. And here is a Bad Faith with Shama.
Squad, you have, and of course you have Bernie Sanders, who I believe are genuinely trying to do something for the people that they represent, ordinary people, working people, the marginalized. But the catch is in the question of how are they actually going to challenge the democratic establishment. And I think, in terms of what you said about, people pushing back against us, saying, well, now is not the right time. There'll be another bite at the apple. Well, remember what they were saying when we were arguing that when a section of the left was saying yes, absolutely, there is an opportunity. Instead of just voting for Pelosi as speaker, actually the squad should withhold the vote and use it as a moment to build real pressure for Medicare for all. But what we said, and at least what Socialist Alternatives said, was that it's not just as a as some sort of drama or sort of meaningless political theater, but to actually use the force the vote tactic in the context of helping to build mass rallies and conferences around Medicare for all. But at that time, AOC and also sections of DSA, they said that, well, this is not the moment to use your political capital. And in fact, I remember AOC in her response to force the vote, and I think she genuinely meant this. She said, instead of this, we should fight for something winnable, which is $15 an hour. Well, here we are talking about $15 an hour. And again, Biden, Harris, Schumer, Pelosi, all the stalwarts, big business stalwarts of the party are throwing excuse after excuse. It's the parliamentarian, it's the rules, it's the decorum, it's Joe Manchin. So I think what we have to point to is sort of the endless logic of making excuses for the Democratic establishment. So today it's this excuse, tomorrow it's.
And that's the point I want to pick up on. You can open the door, whoever that is, but that's the point I want to pick up on. It's the endless logic, and I think we can wrap the Marianne Williamson campaign in with this. The endless logic of looping back to the Democratic Party, sort of the article that I pointed out. I think that sounded like Russell. Go ahead, Russell, if you wanted to chime in on that point, on any of the points made in the video so far.
Yeah, it's the definition of insanity. I think for us, I mean, what Keaton said, that we almost need to take a moment and sit with the reality of where we are. That's right. I think we need to look at where we've been. Right now I'm reading Thomas Frank's The People Know. And it's like Battlestar Galactica. This has all happened before, and it will all happen again. A lot of what we are going through right now is exactly what the People's Party went through in the 1890s. And this whole thing, what we experienced with the Sanders campaign, it's exactly what they did to William Jennings Bryan. That's exactly what they did to him. All the business interests, all the media of the day, they all got together and threw all of their resources at defeating him. He started just like with Bernie. He was very, very popular, and they put everything into bringing everyone together in one voice to crush him. Now, the People's Party, in the end, was very successful in forcing the other parties to adopt their platform, ultimately. That actually took the form of very much of Theodore Roosevelt, but later on with FDR. How did they do it? What Rome is doing with building that library, that was how they thought, actually. They thought in terms of educating the working class, educating people, showing them how their elites had failed them, and explaining exactly. They felt that the working people had to have the education to understand what the elites were doing and how they had failed them. So it was this movement that was oriented around educating people. And also, they tended to stay off cultural issues, which I think is very instructive. The big cultural issue of the time, and this is something Shama doesn't do. We've talked about this a little on the show. The big social issue in their movement was prohibition, because you had a lot of kind of moralist teetotalers who were attracted to this populist movement, and they stayed off the subject because it was too divisive and it had nothing to do with what they were trying to do, which was to build this working class movement. They also made a point of trying to unite the rural underclass with the urban underclass, and they spent a lot of time trying to show them how they had similar problems and similar enemies. And they also would shift alliances. We've talked about this a little bit on the show. We've said in some districts, like Paula Jean Swearingen, we thought she should have run as a Republican. We didn't think it really made any sense for her to run as a Democrat. Like, if you really wanted to challenge Joe Manchin in that district, run on the same platform, because post-Clinton, the people who will most benefit from those kinds of policies, from left economics, they're in the Republican Party now. This is part of why, forget about the Democratic Party. This is a party of the professional managerial class. You're never going to break through with them. The People's Party didn't see themselves as aligned with anybody in particular. If they were in a district where it would be better for them to run in a particular party to get their person in, that was what they would do. Or they would back a candidate who supported their issues. What Frank really illustrates is that we didn't get where we are now by accident. This is a result of over 100 years of the establishment making populism a dirty word. That was their effort then, to take a movement that was very much about enlightening people, about educating people, and to make it synonymous with the uneducated, the untutored, the rabble, the riffraff, right? You're the Bernie bros, or you're the MAGA people. It's just a new version of the same trick. I would really recommend that book. And I think we, as a movement, to try to figure out where to go forward, we have to understand this history. We have to understand how this happened, how we got here. Even talking about, we were joking a little about January 6th, but you know what? The left used to do stuff like that. The left were the ones who did that. The left were the ones who really went and, had guerrilla groups. I don't have to tell you. He started out as the Fred Hampton leftists. You know.
The burglary at the burglary that broke open COINTELPRO, the FBI office in I think it was Chicago they broke into. I just did a stream on it. That was a bunch of leftists that went in there and got those FBI documents. So to your point, Russell, about the left, it would have been historically the group to pull off something not exactly like January 6th.
Not exactly like that.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So to your point. So let's listen to this last point that Shama makes, and then I'll bring up the bad faith audio first, and then we'll switch to the video once she's done with her video. But Shama makes another couple of points that's pertinent to the conversation.
Failed strategy. I think that's what we need to point out. It's not so much about whether AOC is genuine or not. The question is the strategy of not being willing to go into open combat against the establishment, is that working or not? And it's clearly not working. And of course,
and I can pause there because this is actually what is talked about, maybe in not so direct terms. It's stop attacking the squad, stop doing this. You're shielding them, and it's not about them. The attack is about them using a particular strategy that's not working. And that's the point that Shama, I think, makes in that video, is that, okay, put our differences aside about these people, whether we feel like they're being genuine or not, or fake. Put that aside. The bare basic, is the strategy that they are executing, is it producing tangible results? Right. And then, of course, a person who's in bed with these people or a stand of these people will say, yes, it is. And then they'll proceed to list a bunch of things that we would say, oh, that doesn't qualify as an accomplishment. Bringing up a bill that's never voted on, that's not an accomplishment. That's not an accomplishment. That's actually a tactic that's used on the election trail. But let's bring up the next video. This is, I would say, and there goes Danny Haifong, if you want to read the tweet, Nick, as I bring this up.
Danny, big shout out to Danny. He said, does anyone miss Virgil? I don't. Now, I actually never watched Chapo. Like, I never understood that thing. I never understood.
Did we ever find him? Like, where's he at? Virgil. Hey, yo, Virgil, where you at, buddy?
Wait, so I've heard of this.
He used to be
podcast
on
called Trap. What is it called?
It's a podcast. They're still on. They were big in 2016. They started during the 2016 Bernie primary.
Oh, okay.
I think it was like 5 people. I think now it's only down to 3 because Virgil went away for reasons that we probably shouldn't even talk about on the air. Because it's M, an actual one of those, I think. Yeah, and then there was like I think there was a woman on there too. But anyway, yeah, they're audio only, so they've never been like on YouTube.
Okay, so that's why, because I do remember when researching another one, I think I heard Ben Dixon say, if you haven't been listening to the Trap House podcast, I don't know, where have you been? I'm like, what podcast is this? 'Cause I never heard of it. But all right, so let's dive into this here. Black Agenda Report with Margaret Kimberly. Love the fact that Bad Faith is actually having a Margaret Kimberly on the show, because it gives the opportunity for Margaret Kimberly to be, because, you know, this is a person that I would assume the professional managerial class will respect more than us. You know what I mean? Yet she's saying the same things that we would say. And let's listen. This first section, it's a 30-minute mark. It's about 7 minutes long. You guys let me know where you want to stop. And I'm telling you, we're going to want to stop and make a comment. I'm telling you right now. So let's listen.
My candidate, but I think I would be foolish to ignore the energy that's rising up around him in a bipartisan, I don't even say bipartisan, because a lot of independents are seemingly very interested in his campaign as well. And there is this new news that the Democratic Party has said there's no interest in having primary debate, that they are not doing primaries this year, that there will not be an opportunity for Marianne or RFK Jr. to actually draw any contrast, at least on a debate stage, between themselves and their foreign policy positions and President Biden. What do you make of that turn?
Well, I'm not surprised. We started out talking about that. There's very little enthusiasm for him. People don't want him to run again. But the establishment of the Democratic Party are going to stick with him. And the last thing they want are any bumps in the road, any occasions for him to forget where he is. But he did that in 2020, and they stuck with him anyway. But they don't want to take that chance. And there was no Democratic incumbent in 2020. Now he is the incumbent. So the last thing they want is anybody else getting attention and potentially getting buy-in from Democratic Party voters. So of course they're not going to have any debates. But it just shows you that we talk about democracy. People use the word democracy all the time now. But that's not democracy, to say that anyone challenging a president can't get a hearing, can't be seen, has to be disappeared. So that tells you how the system really works. But it's very unfortunate. I think it would be a good thing for him to have to face them on the debate stage, but that is something that they see as being too dangerous, and that's why it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I agree that it would be an incredibly good thing for him to have to face those two and others that might enter in a debate.
No,
I think it would
wouldn't.
be great if there were a movement of folks calling for such a thing, that there should be some consequences politically for the Democratic Party, basically shutting down the Democratic process.
Go ahead.
That's what we,
Look,
that's
look,
what
look,
we need
this
to
is
spend time on.
Why would it be a good thing if they got onto the debate stage? Why? This is what's so frustrating about Bree, and it's like, and even what Margaret Kimberly says there. Oh, well, it would be great if we had a debate. Why? Why? All of this assumes that the Democratic Party is responsive to Democratic input, which it is not. It is a business. That's what people have to understand. It's not just that their policies suck and that they want to perpetuate shitty policies, is that they are. They are intrinsically, fundamentally, they are an anti-democratic organization. You cannot pressure them by democratic means. Bree in this interview mentions a pressure campaign. Can we apply pressure? You can't apply pressure to the Democratic Party. They are a business. They exist to give Harry Sisson a TikTok contract or whatever the fuck they did with those Biden influencers, those Gen Z people.
That is, yes.
That's what they exist to do. It doesn't matter whether Harry Sisson brings in Gen Z voters with that stupid thing he does in front of the camera. They exist to give a sweet gig to donors who write them checks. That is all they give a shit about. There are no pressure campaigns you can run. It is not of any use to put someone on a debate stage to platform ideas. This is not a democratic operation here. This is a business operation. You cannot pressure them. You cannot influence them. There is no point in trying, and there is no benefit to engaging them in a democratic discussion because they don't function democratically. That's not what they're there to do. How fucking long is it going to take for someone as smart as Brianna Joy Gray to get this through their head. Like I said, I don't fault the Vanguard boys for not knowing this, right? they're working with a limited set of tools. Brianna Joy Gray, who's a Harvard lawyer, she doesn't get this by now? Are you kidding? Kidding? It's mind-boggling.
Well, the thing is, again, we mentioned this before. People want to see this manufactured again. They want to see 2016 and 2020 repeat itself because one, it's good business. Two, it's good content. And number three, look, when we look at these debates, to add on to your point, not only will it be pointless and the DNC wants to control it, but remember, are we really expecting the jagoffs from CNN, ABC, CBS, MSNBC, or even Fox News to even ask real hard-hitting questions to the candidates when many a times the progressives or the quote-unquote outsiders are made into the villain and are told and have their time cut short, or either that they're dismissed, and then corporate media has a whole field day in tearing apart the progressive candidate. So even if RFK and Marianne Williamson got on the debate stage, do you want to know what corporate media is going to do? They're going to circle the wagon around Biden and say, oh, look how crazy RFK is, and there's the orb queen. What's Marianne Williamson going to say? They're going to do everything they can to discredit any challenger to the establishment pick. And it's downright pathetic. And even if there was a debate, the DNC is going to have a backup and another backup for a Democratic nominee in case Biden, not in case, Biden would show his dementia, because the man is stuttering and stammering and drooling all over the place. So they're going to have another backup person there, but they don't want to do that because that's extra work to cover up the failures of propping up a senile old man like Biden.
Even that's giving the voters too much credit, though, Kit. He showed all those signs last time. They voted for him anyway. They do what they're told. The voters do what they're told. It doesn't matter. This idea that a debate would mean anything, right? People say, "Oh, well, it's horrible that you don't have a debate." Did the debates do anything last time? Biden shit the bed in every debate last time. He didn't kill it in the debates last time. He was horrible. It was embarrassing. They voted for him anyway because Barack Obama told them to in the 11th hour. And Democratic voters do what they're told to do. Period. Does not matter what the reality is in front of their face. They do what their party leaders and what their media thought leaders instruct them to do. There is no way in hell they will ever tell them to vote for RFK. Therefore, he has no chance. There is no way in hell they will ever tell them to vote for Marianne. Therefore, Marianne has no chance. This is the end of the discussion. End of discussion. It's embarrassing that you have holdouts like this, like Brianna Joy Gray. Like I said, there are certain people. Kyle, he's a one-trick pony, right? He's got his grift there where he talks about Medicare for all, a Green New Deal, and the wars, and whatever. She's smarter than this. She's much, much smarter than this. That's all.
So I have the video too.
but also look, wait. But here's the thing too. We have to remember a lot of these people are very smart. You mentioned, Brianna Joy Gray, very smart person. And she's done a lot of great things, but I think it's also difficult for people to come to terms with what we're talking about. It's like, okay, wow, this is the point of no return. We got to cross that Rubicon. For many, people are afraid. Well, yes, the discussion's over, but they let their fear of the unknown overtake their rational, critical thinking. And go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, at the end of the day, look, we like Brianna. We don't want to beat up on Brianna, but at the end of the day, man, she's a Harvard lawyer. She's an insider. She had a high-ranking position on a serious presidential campaign. She doesn't want to be Asada Shakur, man. Like, she's afraid she's afraid of that. She's afraid of being seen that way, just like Bernie was, right? He doesn't want to be Ralph Nader, right? That explains everything you need to know about every choice Bernie made.
I think psychologically, too, there's something where people who have achieved, such things, people who are high-paying lawyers, professional class people, have a sense of what is at stake for them. We talked about this last time we were on your guys' show, but professional class people don't know despair because they don't feel it. And they are, in a way, more threatened by it because it's so foreign to them. To not have a plan, to not see what you're going to do next is something they are just not familiar with because they've always had a way forward. They've always known what tomorrow brings. A lot of working class people know the feeling of despair, desperation, and uncertainty. They are very familiar with those feelings. Therefore, they're not as threatened by them. Therefore, when we say we don't know what's next and we are okay to be honest about that, we can do that. We can say that, and our audience can actually like absorb that and deal with that and handle that. The bad faith audience cannot. Kyle's audience cannot. Crystal's audience cannot. They need a plan because that's the world they live in. They live in a world where they know what tomorrow brings, whereas a lot of working class people don't. And that, I think, psychologically is a big difference. And it's why they just cannot let go of the idea that we need a primary. We need a challenge. We need to put these ideas on the table and move the ball forward. Even if that is a complete illusion, a complete fantasy, they cannot divorce themselves from it.
Let's listen.
But that's not democracy to say that a president can't, anyone challenging a president can't get a hearing, can't be seen, has to be disappeared. So that tells you how the system really works. But it's very unfortunate. I think it would be a good thing for him to have to face them on the debate stage, but that is something that they see as being too dangerous, and that's why it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I agree that it would be an incredibly
That's not
good
even
for
why.
him to have to face those.
That's not why. He could be completely sharp. They're not. What's in it for them? They don't have to do it. They're not going to do it. And to be fair, as Keaton pointed out on the show the other night, they don't normally do this with an incumbent president in either party. I mean, conventionally, you could definitely make the argument, what's up with that? Like, why don't you? But they don't. It's not like they're making an exception this time.
I think in many ways, just people want to, again, just make something so that there's this, I guess, what's a dopamine hit, so that they feel like they're relevant, like they could put some meaning in their lives.
Right.
Look, when you two were on my show, you were talking about these activists and these people who were protesting Trump. It gives purpose to their lives. Same thing with people wanting to see these primaries, like, oh, maybe we could take on the establishment. It gives purpose to their lives. And someone like Brianna Joy Gray, as again everyone mentioned here before, she doesn't know the struggle of an uncertain future, whereas many people in the live stream audiences, I know RBN, Do Dissidence, Hardlens, we've seen the stories where people say, hey, I'm right now struggling to take care of my family. I'm struggling right now with work. I'm struggling right now to make ends meet, or I've been unemployed for X amount of months. There is an atmosphere, an environment of fear that the people who are in the ivory towers have no goddamn clue what's going on. And so they try and create this something to maybe fool the people again. Now, Americans, I think, are waking up, not as fast as I or any of us would like to see them do that. But it's very difficult for people to come to terms of what do we do next? Because these same people who promote primaries or saying we got to resist Trump are the same individuals that live in a fantasy world where, oh, I can make a difference. I could be a resistance fighter. I could be like the people of an antiquity. But the thing is, the people who were the radicals were in the small minority, okay? The people who were abolitionists were radical. To say that you wanted to free the slaves back in the day, before the Civil War, that was considered radical, and people would probably shoot you for that. That one infamous photo in Germany where everyone's giving the Sieg Heil, and that dude with his arms crossed like that, that took a lot of courage. A lot of people can't do that. They can't be a radical. They could say, oh, if I was born in the Civil War era, I would have been the good one and freed the slaves in the South. Or I would have helped the Jews escape the Nazis. No, you wouldn't. None of these people would. They're not real in their commentary of thinking they could bring in a real future. We got to go into our despair. We got to realize that it's going to get worse. And we have to build that infrastructure that's different than what we're used to seeing in mainstream media and current politics, because it's not working.
Well, this is the irony. If you're conforming that much to the narratives of your time, it very strongly suggests that you would have been a Nazi. You would have been supported. You would have been a conformist in whatever age you lived in, because you're a sheep now, what makes you think you wouldn't have been a sheep then? Like, if you were gonna be a radical then, you'd be a radical now. If you're not a radical now, you wouldn't have been a radical then. So not being a radical then meant being a Nazi, being a slave owner. That's who you would have
It's
been.
like because the stuff of the past are now commonplace, and they feel comfortable with now the past. What would be radical is now just the status quo, so they feel comfortable with saying, "Oh, I would have been that." It's completely a joke. But let's get through some more of this video, gentlemen. Let me know when you want to stop.
Those two and others that might enter in a debate. I think it would be great if there were a movement of folks calling for such a thing, that there should be some consequences politically for the Democratic Party, basically shutting down the democratic process on the left side of the aisle. It does seem to me like there's a tension between a sort of unwillingness for certain leftists to get behind. I mean, there's I think a legitimate apprehension about the legitimacy of these candidates and the extent to which they're going to ultimately shepherd you back into the Democratic Party, and whether or not they are really willing to stick the landing, and how strong their leftist bona fides are. I think all of those are legitimate questions to put to any candidate, but there's a tension, I think, between the left not wanting to get burned again, like the way many people felt burned by Bernie, and their ability to create a pressure campaign to challenge the Democratic Party to allow these figures on the debate stage. It almost feels like you have to be invested somewhat in at least the relevancy of these candidacies. The fact that they're to the left of Biden on some issues, to really want to push for a campaign that could expose the Democratic Party for its anti-democratic actions in this moment. But I'm very skeptical that there will be any accountability for the Democratic Party, because who would mount such a campaign but the left? And the left.
You just figured that out, huh?
Well, here she says, "Who would mount that campaign but the left?" Can we just hear the rest of that sentence? I'm interested.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Let's let me go back to get the full context. 10 seconds, and then we can play it.
I mean, there's I think a legitimate apprehension about the legitimacy of these candidates and the extent to which they're going to ultimately shepherd you back into the Democratic Party, and whether or not they are really willing to stick the landing, and how strong their leftist bona fides are. I think all of those are legitimate questions to put to any candidate, but there's a tension, I think, between the left not wanting to get burned again, like the way many people felt burned by Bernie, and their ability to create a pressure campaign to challenge the Democratic Party to allow these figures on the debate stage. It almost feels like you have to be invested somewhat in at least the relevancy of these candidacies. The fact that they're to the left of Biden on some issues.
God damn it!
Really
No.
No,
I'm sorry. I don't mean to pause or interrupt, but look, I mean, we all thought that Bernie could do it in 2016 and 2020, and it didn't work. And then you had the sycophants carrying water, like, "Oh, if we hold Hillary Clinton's feet to the fire, she'll move left. We hold Biden's feet to the fire, they'll move left." AOC said, "Hey, he's exceeding expectations." Bernie said, "Hey, that's my good friend Joe." Everyone giving the establishment a pass. It's not going to goddamn work because they don't care. They never did. They rigged primaries. In Illinois in 2020, I did an interview, that it was in regards towards election integrity and what was happening here towards Bernie Sanders' campaign in the 2020 primary. In Illinois, hey, we're heavyweight champions here of, lack of election integrity. Yeah. And those votes somehow disappeared. And that's just only one example here in Illinois. There are countless examples in 2016 and 2020 where, again, people were waiting 8 hours, 10 hours, a whole goddamn day just to goddamn vote. So the thing is, no, Brianna, no one wants to go through it. It's not relevant because if if RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson are not going to be vocal about election fraud, not going to be vocal about how the DNC screws and scams over these candidacies, not going to address the fact that the DNC has super delegates, that they're wasting everyone's goddamn time. And if you're going to be throwing in money to both of these candidates and they're not going to fight against Biden, I'm sorry, you're a sucker. I'm so sorry. But you're a victim in an abusive relationship. So Gen Z, heads up, they're going to screw you over again because they made it very clear. The DNC has an agenda. So no, yeah, we can acknowledge it. Yes, we could talk about it, but I'm not going to sit here on my show and say, we got to vote for Marianne Williamson, RFK Jr. for this primary, and it's going to happen. No, because people have been lied to. People have spent time, effort, energy, money, sacrificed time with their friends and family, and so much more, gave up careers just to help out Bernie. And what did he do? He crafted people's hats. That's what he did. That's what he goddamn did.
Anybody else want to craft their hat?
Well, I'll just briefly. What the hell makes anyone think these people are going to be in the race in February? Nobody's going to give money to these people. Nobody's going to give money to these people. Nobody. Hey, it's very easy to get on your keyboard and bitch at us when we're doing our show in the comment section. RFK is saying the stuff about Ukraine. Yeah, so are we, man. Okay. How about I run for president? Are you gonna send me money?
Right.
Okay. I say lots of stuff that you probably like. Doesn't mean I can actually run for president successfully. They're not even going to be in the race in all likelihood by the time you have a primary. And you know what? Marianne, RFK, those motherfuckers are both rich. They believe in it so much, let them pay for it. Let them pay for it. If they're on the ballot, by the time it gets to your town, go ahead, vote for them. Just don't waste your time and your money. Let them self-fund if they believe in it so much.
All right, so let's listen to some more. I'll play probably a minute and a half and then stop it and then move it to the. It's a gradual thing I'm trying to get here. I think there's 2 more points. So let's listen because Margaret Kimberly has to get a little. Well, I won't describe it, but let's listen.
Campaign that could expose the Democratic Party for its anti-democratic actions in this moment. But I'm very skeptical that there will be any accountability for the Democratic Party because who would mount such a campaign but the left? And the left seems to be indifferent to the whole project. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think you're right. But if people were ready to make demands, it could be very useful for Biden to be challenged. If people weren't afraid, I think this. I was referring to Black voters, but I think it's true. I think it's especially true of Black voters who are committed to keeping Republicans out of office. But I think it's true for most Democrats. At the end of the day, their biggest fear is of a Republican victory, and they can very easily be wooed into supporting, especially an incumbent, as is the case with Biden. If people had a little more courage, it could be useful for Kennedy and Williamson to be running. It could put pressure on Biden. But if people are going to, get weak at the end of the day and let him off the hook.
She's referring to the candidate here. If you didn't see that switch, she's referring to if they're going to be weak at the end of the primary.
People had a little more courage. It could be useful for Kennedy and Williamson to be running. It could put pressure on Biden. But if people are going to, get weak at the end of the day and let him off the hook and then decide they have to vote for him no matter what, then it's all for naught. And that's the shame.
See, bad faith, Bree thought she had a soundbite right there. She thought she had a soundbite until Margaret Kimberly doubled back and said, hold on. Yeah, it could be useful. But it's only useful if the candidate is willing to have a backbone. That's the only way that this is going to be useful. So it could, Bree. And this people, somebody on her, anytime she has a guest and that guest knows her stance and they know that they're far radical to her, they try to dress it up for them. And this is what Margaret Kimberly is doing. She's trying to say, yes, I guess it could be useful, but it would require this, and this. Yeah. And I'm going to fast forward to another part as you guys chime in. I can't see you, but one of you wanted to chime in. Go ahead.
Well, the thing is, when we look at the idea of a candidate being brave, Bernie Sanders said numerous times to be brave. To quote that infamous line at the end of Bulworth, you got to be you either be a spirit or a ghost. All right. The thing is, Bernie Sanders chose to be a ghost. He was afraid of being recognized as the next Ralph Nader. If he had gone through and wrote on to be a third party candidate, if he just gave a middle finger to Hillary Clinton and went all in for being third party, he would have been made into the greatest political villain in American history. But for those who are initiated, for those who know the truth, would have viewed him as somebody who stood by his principles and broke away from a corrupt Democratic Party. And the fact that Donald Trump even brought it up not only once in the 2016 primary, but even in the 2020 primary, like, hey, Bernie, they're screwing you over. Trump more or less tweeted that stuff out, like, hey, look what they're doing to Bernie. And of course, Trump only cares about his ego, but he brought it up. And the fact that a rival candidate of another party addresses the fact that your primary is rigged and they're screwing you over says a lot about Bernie Sanders' character, and that is he knew it. Bernie Sanders didn't believe in his movement because he wasn't brave enough to believe in his movement. He didn't believe in his supporters because he didn't believe in his supporters, and he wasn't brave enough to believe in his ideas either. He talks a good game, he tweets it out, and that's it. I will thank him forever for inspiring me to do Hard Lens Media, Daniel and I, to do this show, but that's it. He inspired others to be better, but he doesn't believe in his messaging, and he doesn't believe in any of the people. He didn't believe in any of the work that we've done for him. And so the thing is, RFK Jr., Marianne Williamson, I like to think that you're brave, but I don't think you're going to really follow through with it.
Well, they're telling you they're not. If they were going to follow through, they would tell you right now, right? Because look at all the support they're leaving on the table by not promising to leave the Democratic Party. Well, because the normie Dems are not going to back them, so that's out of the question. So you're looking to the left. So how many of the left are going to back you after what we went through with Bernie? So the fact that they will not just straight out tell you, oh yeah, no, I'm going all the way. I'm going independent. Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm going to use the apparatus of the Democratic Party for as long as I can ride it, and then I'm running independent. Why wouldn't they do that? They're telling you from the beginning that this ends with them telling you must vote for Joe Biden because the alternative is, I didn't want to lose the liberals I was talking to today by saying this because they brought up, well, but what about the other guy? What about him? What about him? When the other guy was in, we weren't in Ukraine. It's not a good option, but that's not much of an argument at this point to me. Oh my God, well, you must because of the other person. I mean, pick your poison. You got this poison with the one, you got this poison with the other. But you say that to a liberal, that's it. They're shut down at that point. you cannot say another word after that they're going to listen to.
Well, the thing is, I got two stories about in regards to talking to liberals in regards to Trump. People have turned him into this cartoon character, Hitler 2.0, when in fact we've had genocidal presidents that ordered the destruction of the Native American nations here. I mean, Trump, scumbag person, but he's not Hitler 2.0. We've had actual genocidal presidents before. And the thing is, I remember Daniel brought this story up a long time ago. He brought the name of Donald Trump. He went to like a family gathering or a dinner party. I forget which one it was, but and this guest that was at his house just went into absolute panic mode like this, because as soon as Daniel said Trump, like, and that's what they did. And then when I went to like a dinner with friends, this one person who was I guess a friend of a friend, right? I mentioned Donald Trump during one of the conversations, and this person, she did this, like, please don't ever say that man's name again. It just starts honestly, it's almost like the way she was crying was almost as if I said all of the offensive swear words at once towards her. And that's how easily triggered people are by Trump, because they made him into this cartoon villain. So we gotta vote Democrat, poor people.
You know who my mom is triggered by? Ron DeSantis. My mom is triggered by, and we don't even live. We live how many thousands or hundreds of miles from Florida?
Thousands.
She never been. Yeah. She doesn't.
They're on the other side of the country.
She's triggered by Ron DeSantis. But let me do a heat check from everybody, because I know, Nick, if this is your dinner hour, you looking a little looking a little weak there. So I wanted to check in, because there's not a lot more, but there's probably at least another 20 minutes of that interview. But we can do it another stream if everybody's kind of tired and we wanted to
Oh, I'm
close
ready to
out,
rock
we
and
can-
roll. I'm ready to rock and roll.
Yeah,
Let's
we
keep
can
on
do
going
another
forward.
stream. But let me see, Nick, are you okay? I know it's probably dinner time or just past
Yeah,
dinner
I
time.
probably we can always do this again. 'Cause I probably gotta bounce out soon. It's getting late. Our brother's about
Okay.
come home here soon.
Yeah, and the thing is, I don't, hopefully this is not the only time we're gonna be able to set
let's
this
do it again.
up.
Absolutely.
We have a few super chats. I want to get to a few super
Yeah,
chats.
so we can, for those that have been wanting us to, finish with this, we'll probably just move this to the next time we're able to do this, because it's an evergreen stream. It's not like a topic that, that's needed to be done right this second, because there's a lot that Margaret Kimberly says, and it's important that she says it on the Bad Faith podcast, so people can hear her say, this reformist shit, like this is not going to work. We need to get over this. Like she says that in the interview, and we'll get to that the next time. But if we want to get to some super chats, Nick, let's do it, sir.
Yeah, let's hear a few chats here. Thank you for $2. Will Orange Man Bag get Democrats reelected? I see a lot of people, and feel free to push back on me if you want, but I see a lot of people who say that Biden is screwed. I'll tell you guys, electoral politics is unpredictable, and I see the right. They are obsessed with the culture war. They are so obsessed with this war on wokeism that Americans don't care about. So even though the Biden administration has been terrible, do not underestimate the abilities for Republicans to choke this over. The person who wins this election is going to be the person who pissed the least people off, because this is going to be the lowest turnout election of all time. There's nothing that the Republicans are doing right. There's nothing that the Democrats are doing right. It's going to be over who's going to piss the most people off. And I think people forget that Trump is really despised. He's really despised by a lot of people. So as much as the Democrats and Biden is fucked up, as soon as this election starts and the right wing really pick up their culture war nonsense, they're gonna piss and scare a lot of people too. So I'm more 50-50. I'm not there are people that sure I'm at the 50-50 point, because who can predict this bullshit, right?
No, I think you're absolutely right about that. I think people who think that Biden is absolutely done for, I think exactly what you said is right. They are underestimating the Republicans' ability to fuck things up, just like they did in the midterms. There's no reason under those circumstances that the Republicans should not have knocked off, half a dozen Democratic senators, half a dozen Democratic governors. They didn't knock off any of them, right? Because they can overplay their hand too. They can screw things up too. And one of the things that's happened over the past few years is a lot of revolutionary spirit has been filtered out of the electoral process, both on the left and on the right. So this is really a normie forum right now. I mean, to a large extent, real deal radicals would always tell you that electoral politics is bourgeois bullshit, right? But in 2016, it was less so because there was this populist fervor. There was this anti-establishment zeitgeist in the air. So more of that energy was able to actually influence at the polls. Now we are back to a place where, the normies are back in charge, and it is those affluent suburban swing voters who are going to determine who wins a handful of states, and who wins those handful of states will determine who wins the big thing. And I think you're right, Nick. I think it's 50-50.
All right, CJ, I hope your mom's not watching.
No. She'll have a heart attack watching this show. Go ahead.
I've been saying for a year that Ron DeSantis is going to be the president.
I'm
right or I'm wrong. I think Ron DeSantis will be the president. I do not think Joe Biden will be able to beat any Republican, whether it's Trump or whether it's DeSantis. But I think it's going to be DeSantis, and I think DeSantis is going to bury him.
I'm in the same camp. I'm in the same camp as it just doesn't feel like Joe Biden can win, but I'm not 100%. I'm more like a 60-40. That's more of my, as far as my level of sureness, if that's a word, is it just seems like, because when I think back to 2020, he only won with all of what was going on with Trump and all of the propaganda, and this is before all the revelations about Russiagate came out. when all of that was going on, he can only squeak it out because there was COVID.
Yep.
And that to me is like, wow, you barely squeaked this out because of COVID and everything else. So to me, all of these these charges, it means they're completely meaningless to the people who want to vote for him. But to Nick's point and to Keaton's point also, this is the reason I give it more of a 60-40, a little more than Nick, like than 50-50, is because, or the reason I make it a little bit close, but still give it an edge, is because of what Nick said. And that is, any of these people can fuck it up. The midterms, they should have walked away easily, but they.
Well, it was Roe v. Wade.
Yeah,
but they still don't have an answer for that. They still don't have an answer.
I think they also leaned into the culture war too, is another thing to me. I think Nick and I did a stream on this, or a segment at least, where we talked about how that played a part, the culture war fight sort of played a part into what people, just like when the Democrats were talking about everything except for the economy, you're talking about everything except for the economy too on the right. You're talking about trans rights. You're talking about this. It's everything except for meat and potato issues. But go ahead. Anybody want to chime in or back to this?
I was answering this super chat. I remember I was on the Jimmy Dore show and I was really wrong where I said in front of a lot of people, I said I think Ron DeSantis is going to be the nominee. I do not think that's happening anymore. Like that shit. No, that shit is 100%. So I said in front of a lot. I was 100%.
Oh, now you're like,
yeah, like I will admit I was definitely wrong, but it's electoral politics.
All right. Well, look, Nick, if I turn out to be wrong, I'm glad you said that because I'm going to find that clip and I'm going to say, actually, I only thought that because Nick said it.
I know you think Ron DeSantis is going to win, but I think it's done for him. I think after his. For some reason, I think the establishment was delusional. They thought like Ron DeSantis is going to be like a normal Republican, but DeSantis is lean. He's trying to like out Trump. Is that not going to work?
Yeah.
And that also like scared a lot of like Republican donors. And so that's why I think DeSantis is done. I think it's definitely gonna be Trump. I was wrong when I said I thought it was gonna be DeSantis at first, but it's gonna be Trump Biden, which is gonna lead to the most depressed turnout ever. So that's why I don't have a prediction. And that's why I say I'm 50-50, because this election is going to be decided based on what party pisses the people the most off. The Democrats can lose if people get really pissed off because of Biden push for the Ukraine war. But the Republicans, like, I don't cover the culture war a lot, but they have gone full throttled on this shit, and they're scaring a lot of people, and they can easily turn many independents off.
Who are they scaring?
Because of that. Right?
Well, are they scaring white suburban women? Because that's really all that matters, I guess.
That's my point. Look, I'm partly basing my belief on the midterms, man. Look where he outperformed. You're talking about this culture war shit. People do care. People do care. Because if you look at where he outperformed, it's in Democratic counties. They knew what his positions were on teaching about gender in school. He had already picked this fight with Disney.
So the reason I say that is because y'all remember 50% of Americans don't vote. Right now we have a record amount of people who are independent, and we had the least amount of people who had turnout during the midterms and all this bullshit, right? So this election is going to be about who are most riled up and who, like, in Democrats and Republicans, they only have about 20 to 25% of that population, and that number is shrinking. So this competition is not about like who's the best; it's about who can maintain that number.
Right.
There's not going to be like people think that, and this is what a lot of right wingers get wrong. And this is my personal opinion, because people think that the culture war is going to fire people up. I think it don't. I think most people roll their eyes at this shit. And I live in the Midwest. Most people care about material conditions, and that's not what the Republican Party is talking about. They're talking about trans people. And yeah, people who care about trans people going to be wired the fuck up about that. But most people don't give a fuck. That's why they don't vote. That's why they're not Republicans, because they don't give a shit.
I think you guys are talking about two different things, because Nick is more talking about this is not going to fire up the broader population. And then you're more, so it's more of talking about the likely voter versus just the registered voter. You get what I'm saying? It feels like that's the difference.
Well, I think where the Republicans also have to be careful is with the economic shit, right? I mean, threatening to force the country into default. I mean, Janet Yellen just said we could run out of cash by June 1st if the Freedom Caucus holds out and doesn't pass the debt ceiling. I mean, talk about shooting yourself in the dick. They're going to have a very weak Biden economy to run on in 2024.
Yeah.
So if they just be cool and let that play out, they will have that issue to run on.
Yeah.
If they kamikaze the whole fucking thing by causing us to default on the debt ceiling, well, now the country's going to blame the Republicans. Talking about snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. Like, they have to be careful not to overplay.
That is a very, very, very big if, because you know what?
Yeah.
Anytime they talk this shit, I don't care what anybody says. They get a phone call.
No, I know.
They get a phone call from the people who really run this shit.
I'm not saying it's
not
not a big if.
No, you're not doing that.
I agree with you. It's a big if, but it is something that they have to take into consideration, because that's the whole ball game that they could just take off the board, and you never know. Like, they have a habit of overreaching, and it's very possible they will do that.
Well, the thing is too, like, here's the thing. After 2016, I think I learned a lesson. I think we all learned a lesson. Don't underestimate who the American people will vote for and who has a strong message. And look, Trump, no, he's not a radical. He's not going to put a monkey wrench into the system. But let's say, to your point, the Republicans do kamikaze the economy. We saw Trump in 2016 in the primary go after name brand legacy politicians and portray them as incompetent fools. If Trump is smart and he runs a good campaign, he can say, hey, look, these people in the Senate and the Republican Party, I'm going to make sure they're out of office too. They don't represent my agenda. He's going to put in that whole demagogue look of, I'm going to fix your problems. I'm going to make them pay. And Trump's the only reason why he's really running now at this point is his name and to regain the MAGA movement so that no one else takes his creation. Because at this point, that's all what Trump cares about. Because originally, he wasn't hoping to win 2016. He was actually going to try and create his own Fox News media network, which never came into fruition. So Trump, you know, I wouldn't put it past him to win the primary and maybe potentially win the election in 2024. My concern is, though, again, we're going to see the resurgence of the social justice warrior industrial complex of people saying, resist Trump. And then, of course, I'm going to see these jag-off idiots in downtown Chicago saying, all right, let's march to Trump Tower that's across the river. And I see these people get marched in goddamn cages. Yeah, Malcolm X would lead his followers into a cage. That's resistance. Dr. King would do that too. No, you idiots. That's not going to goddamn happen. It just concerns me, because then we're going to see another Me Too movement. Time's up. All these fake activists who do not have the ability to be the dauntless few, like Rome, doing that thing with the library and doing so much more with you guys at RBN. That's the dauntless few. Misty Winston speaking up for Assange. Dauntless few. Everyone else, they're going to be using Trump as their cash cow. And you know the media wants Trump to win too, because that's their orange cocaine. They need that because the views are dying. They need him. They need him so bad. They won't admit it, but he's good for their views. And that's why I think that Trump, if he doesn't win the general election, he'll have to win the primary, because he brings in the views, because he's controversial and people like to talk about him. And that's why his name is going to be immortal in American politics, unfortunately. And of course, you're going to have the liberals jump on board and say, we got to resist him. We got to stop Hitler 2.0, because if we don't, it's the end.
And my question for people who consider themselves left, for me being nice, if you consider yourself left, you got Trump derangement syndrome. You see, like, people like Bernie, they want to give up the fascist, the idea that we are a democracy, give up left ideas because we must defeat Trump. So if that's your position, you have to acknowledge that you're just a Democrat, because Tucker Carlson is coming. Like, so you saying that we must abandon left principles and support capitalist neoliberals because of Trump. So where's the line? So are you saying that we got to give up left principles to make sure that the right, we must join with liberals to defeat the right? Because let's say Trump is bad, that's why we got to give up our principles. But Tucker Carlson is coming. Like, he's the most popular. There's rumors that he might run as a politician, and he's also the guy you guys paint as the big bad guy. You guys see the never-ending cycle. So when Trump is gone, then Tucker Carlson is come, and they're gonna make the same argument. Yeah, I know. I said we gotta vote Democrat because Trump, but now we gotta do it again because Tucker Carlson.
Well, sure, that's their game. That's their game. It's WWE. That's all it is.
The last time I fell for it was Mitt Romney. I'm not falling for it again. I fell for Mitt Romney was the guy. I thought he was gonna be the new George Bush 3, which was Barack Obama. I was naive not to know that, but I fell for him. But I was like, I'm done here. So when Trump came again, so I'm done. You can't allow them to fearmonger you, because they're always gonna have another.
Well, that's it. That's it. And I'm a little older than some of y'all on the panel. Look, my whole life, we've just gone right and right and right and right. I mean, it's like I have that in my living memory, watching them do this since I was a child. Since I was a child, you had to stop whoever because they're gonna destroy the country. And oh my God, if they win, it's gonna be Nazi Germany. It's always Nazi Germany, man. It's always Nazi Germany.
Every election.
It's always going to be Nazi Germany. And I will tell you what has happened over the course of my life. Nothing. If you're just a working person, shit really doesn't change one way or the other. It's not better for you if this party wins. It's not better for you if that party wins. For you personally, it is probably not going to make any difference. Look, credit where credit is due. This was a New York Times article. You guys might have seen it, where they interviewed voters. What was it, in Milwaukee? Black voters who didn't vote for Hillary because they were so disappointed with Obama. And basically what they said was nothing changed for us when he got elected. Yeah. And that's how it is with most people. You think for most people, when Donald Trump was president, it made any difference? It didn't make any difference in anybody's lives. You think their lives got better or even worse when Joe Biden became president? I mean, the overall, to be fair, coming out of COVID, there's a lot of moving parts with the economy. I don't know that wouldn't have happened no matter who was there. Or, maybe he's to blame, maybe he's not. I'm not enough of an economist to really say. But for the average person, and this is why half the country doesn't vote. Look, people will do what's in their interest. If their experience was when they vote, their lives get substantially better, they'd vote. They would. They don't vote because why are they going to stand on a line for 8 hours? Look, the only time in my life things got substantially better for people had nothing to do with politics. It had to do with technology. In the 90s, the money was falling out of the trees. If you couldn't make money in the 90s, you were one lazy motherfucker, man. The money was just falling out of the sky because they invented the internet. They commercialized the internet. Anytime that you've had a new technology that's that radically transformative to society, there was an economic boom. It came with the radio. It came with the invention of the car. All of a sudden, this whole new industry was being created. You're talking about manufacturing the computers. You're talking about wiring the cities. You're talking about a huge creation of an entirely new industry. The Democrats took credit for that. This is a big part of how neoliberalism got so embedded in our politics, because they attributed it to Clintonian economics. They said, Kermit the Frog could have been the president in the 90s. You would have had a boom economy. It had absolutely nothing. Clinton was a lucky motherfucker. The things that he did actually should have really hurt the working class, but it didn't, because you had all of this money, all of this productivity being generated by this brand new technology and all of the accompanying jobs that came with it. And we've been living in that nightmare ever since, by a basic misinterpretation of what caused that economy. Other than that decade, I've never seen things get any better for people. And the reason things were better was that technology was invented. It had nothing to do with politics. Actually, what they were doing politically, if it hadn't coincided with that moment, would have devastated working people at that time the way they got devastated very shortly afterwards.
All right, let me get to the next super chat.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we still got a few super chats to get to. Thank you for $5, Chris. As a black voter, I am not convinced one party is significantly better than the other when it comes to my interests. Oh my God, the Karen's about to get you, Chris, for that. How dare you promote red, brown lines conspiracy theories? Anyway, that's what I get called. I get called red, brown lines. They call it Trumper because I look out for black interests and the interests of workers. I say stuff that the state of the black community has gotten worse since the civil rights movement, and that's with us voting Democrat. And they say, "How dare you?" That's the white liberal for you guys. I think that's the leftist mafia gonna have a seat down after this panel. Expose the Democratic nonsense agenda and hypocrisy. Good luck, panel. RBN, do Dissidence Harlem Media. Don't worry, the leftist mafia, they're probably gonna do another story about Elon Musk. You know, the very pressing issue. They're gonna cover Matt Taibbi. They're gonna talk about how Matt Taibbi is the worst of all time.
They're gonna do it. They're gonna do it.
Yeah.
They're gonna do a whole like Bud Light episode. I heard.
They're gonna do a panel about how the Twitter files is actually bad. How social media companies working with the government, central people. Not a big deal. That's the panel they're gonna do. That's their main focus. I ain't worried about it. But anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Any other? I think that's the last super chat. I want to make sure.
Is that the last? I think that was the last one, unless there was any other.
Yeah, I think that last.
I didn't know the order. So
wait, hold on. There's one more I missed.
Yeah.
Carrie,
if is there anybody still here who we haven't read your super chat? Just write a regular message, and we'll see if we make sure we get it in there, because we had some people bringing that up. So
yeah, thank you for $5. Please discuss how U.S. citizen owned utilities and resources work. We can all get a check like Alaska. We end poverty and fix reparations, free healthcare. Thank you for $5, Carrie. I think that's all the super chats. Big shout out to all the new members as well. Once again, great stream. CJ, any last thoughts? I want to get everyone anything else you wanted to cover?
Yeah, let me just shout this out before we do the last thoughts, because people will start to leave. Subscribe to our Substack if you want to know when we do streams like this or any other streams. Subscribe to our Substack so you get notifications. Thank you for those that have recently subscribed. I think we might have very close to hitting 34,000 if we haven't hit it during the stream. Thank you for those.
Beautiful. Congratulations.
That has done that. Let's see if we can get to 700 likes. 700 likes. And now let's pass it around. Whoever you want to start with, Nick. I'll pass it back to you.
We can start with Kit. Anything coming up, anything you want to shout out? Any last thoughts regarding the conversation as well?
Sure. Well, first of all, we need to have a repeat of this conversation, because not only is this evergreen, but it's going to be very relevant not only throughout 2023, but going into 2024. So Hard Lens, we're live in the morning. Start your morning right and righteously angry. So that way, when you go to work, you're at least motivated to give a middle finger to neoliberalism. So that's what we're going to be doing every 9 a.m. In the morning. Plus, we're also getting ready to, again, we will be covering the DNC convention here in Chicago in 2024, so we'll be getting ready for that. But I mean, that's a years down the road. But a final thought for this conversation is this: look, it is difficult to talk about this, because in many ways it's reopening the old wounds of the hope that we had in 2016 and in 2020. But we cannot rely on electoral politics, YouTube channels, or the establishment to really fill up our need to bring in change. What's going to happen is we have to start building at the ground level, building movements and organizations not connected to Washington, D.C., to be vilified by those who would say in theory they are our allies, to be vilified by the media. And it's not going to be easy, but history is on our side, because we have to start doing this now. If we don't start doing this now, speaking truth to power, collaborating, and calling out the two-party system for what it is, nothing's going to change, and it will get progressively worse. And the censorship is very real on social media. Our voices and all of your voices are significant in order for us to try and make sure that we create something far better and more representation of what the people want. Because when the people are free, when they're self-reliant, when they're able to provide for themselves and their community, we remove these jagoff politicians' control over us. We remove their thought and their policies over us, because for a long time these politicians have danced and drank because they believe we are weak. They believe they succeeded in manipulating us, and we got to break away from that manipulation. We got to come to terms of the mistakes made in 2016 and 2020, because if we don't, then we're going to be right back here again 8 years down the road. What happened to the left? And I don't want to have that conversation. I want to talk about, hey, here's this movement that was created in 2024. Look what it's doing now. They didn't see it coming. We planted a seed now. Look what happened 8 years down the road, 10 years down the road. We're breaking away from the two-party system. It is not going to be an overnight victory.
Well said, Kid. Now I'll pass it to Keaton, and then Russell. Thank you guys for joining us as well. We got to do this again. There are a lot of calls for that in the chat. So thank you guys for joining us. Any last thoughts? We can start with Keaton and then go Russell. Make sure you guys check out Dissidence as well. Any final thoughts, Keaton?
Oh yeah, no, thank you. I mean, this was awesome. This was a lot of fun, as I knew it would be. Just to build on what Kit said there, yeah, it's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen overnight. You know, that sounds to a lot of impatient, neurotic progressives who are looking for a candidate. They say, well, wait a minute, isn't that incrementalism? Now are you guys the incrementalists by saying this is going to take time? No. That's not what it's about. This is about, as I said earlier, sitting with your own feelings of directionlessness and despair for a moment to build something better. And look, you want to take a real red pill? It's probably too late for our generation to have better lives, financially speaking anyway, than the generation before us. It's probably too late for us. CJ, I saw you have kids. I have kids myself.
Mm-hmm.
It might even be too late for their generation.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully it's not, but it might be. But maybe their kids will have something better if we can get that ball rolling now. And I think it takes a certain courage to accept that. It takes a certain courage to just stare that down. Like, our generation, we are not going to live as well as the generation before us. It's probably too late to save ourselves, but if you believe in humanity as a project, then you have to hope it's not too late for the next generation and the one after that, and that's what you fight for at this point. And in the meantime, have as much fun, laugh as much as you can, hang out with us as much as you can, right? You find meaning in things, right? This is not to depress people. This is to do the opposite. It's to get people to just reflect honestly. The sort of backdrop here is pitch black, pitch darkness, and I think that's very fitting. You have to be willing to stare that down. It is not brave or courageous or noble to create illusions that there's something there that isn't there. That's what Shama told Bree in this most recent interview. We covered that segment. I know you guys watch it. She says, we owe it to working people not to build illusions in candidates or projects or parties that are of no use to them. So don't create illusions. Find meaning in what's here. There's a lot here to find meaning in. There's no reason to get depressed over this. I don't know if you'll take my word for that, but I hope you do. And if you do, come subscribe to Do Dissidence and hang out with us twice a week. We're a fun bunch, as I'm sure you can tell from that.
I think Keith misspoke a little bit. It's probably too late for you and your children, but if you'll subscribe and donate to our channels, it's not too late for ours.
Right.
So best thing you can do is subscribe and sign up on our Patreon feed. For the sci-fi geeks, we're kind of in the position of Foundation. You remember how in Foundation, they knew the collapse was coming? And so they were preparing for that. That's kind of what we have to do. Because you know what? The right wing is doing that. I would really recommend an article in, what was that, Keaton? Vanity Fair? The new right? It was in Vanity Fair,
I think that was right? Vanity Fair, yeah.
Look, man, they've got a lot of intellectual ferment going on there. Just like us, listen, for real. They get what's happening. They see the collapse coming. There are counterparts. They are our true counterparts, these right-wing, younger intellectuals. But their solutions are terrifying. That's why we're not them. Their solutions are like monarchy, right? like just crazy shit, things that we don't want. But if they are the only ones preparing for that, if they're the only ones building a foundation, the future is going to belong to them. We need to have that intellectual ferment on our side, and we need to have a plan because they do, and it's not one we want to live in.
I want to have I don't mean to interject, but I got to have a conversation about what do you think about a post-secular society? Like, could a federation like Star Trek survive? Like, I don't mean to go off of science fiction here, but I mean, I got to ask. I didn't know you're a science fiction fan, and Now, son, I want to pick your brain just a little bit. So there you go. All right.
There you go. A new stream idea, a new episode
Yeah.
idea right there. There you go. All right, so I'm gonna take all of us out, and we're gonna go out to the video that I clipped from Do Dissonance breaking down the Shama Sawant interview. We'll play a couple of minutes to send us out. I want to thank Hardlands Media and our friends over at Do Dissidence for joining us today. We're going to go out with this video here by Do Dissidence breaking down the interview with Shama Sawant over at Bad Faith. And again, we're going to do the Bad Faith interview with Margaret Kimberly the next time. Won't say when. Maybe we'll be back next Monday. We'll talk amongst each other next Monday, maybe, or in 2 weeks, or we'll see. But look for us, the Post-Duopoly. And I took left out of the show, the Post-Duopoly left show, because I want people who's not left to not be scared away, and they can go, hey,
good idea.
Yeah, I want to. We're Post-Duopoly, whether red or blue, like we're either way.
Yeah.
Actually, next Monday at 8:00, I have a thing. This might be of interest to you guys. I'm actually invited on Victor Tiffany's podcast. He just invited me on. He's the OG Bernie or Bust guy. He's the guy who wrote the Bernie or Bust book and stuff like that. So so I can't do it next Monday, but if we want, we could, make a different date or something. Or
it doesn't have to be Monday. It doesn't have to be Monday. Yeah. We'll talk. Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Count me on board. I'm ready for it.
Yeah. So we'll talk amongst each other and produce another date for everyone, and we'll try to give you a couple of days heads up, just like we gave you for this one. So, all right, gentlemen, I'll put all of you or all of us in the back, and we'll start the end of this show with this video here. I'll play about 2 or 3 minutes of it, and then we'll be gone. All right, so here we go. Oh, wrong one.
And said, could you please, if you went to Bernie and said, could you please, would you consider doing a dirty break? Would you consider running as an independent? Are you thinking at all about the possibility of
stop? If you went to Bernie and said, or one of the RFK Marianne, if you're considering doing a dirty break right away, you're in fantasy world. You're in fantasy land. I'm sorry, you're not living in reality. You're living in a world that you wish existed because you don't like not having a candidate to back in a race, and you're having a hard time processing.
You just
what
can't
to
imagine.
Do. Right.
You can't imagine.
Right.
And they also, we've talked about this, and look, I mean, I think Bree has good intentions, unlike a lot of people in this space. But hey, if you have a show like this, I think especially we didn't really have this show in 2016 and 2020. We were writing articles by 2020, but we weren't really doing this. They're in this habit, I mean, this is how they think of election cycles. They just can't even think of not getting involved in the primary game. And as you point out, just because of the way the cookie crumbled, where Trump won, so you had an open primary for the Democrats again in 2020.
In 2020, right?
Like they've just never experienced this in the time that they've been in this space.
Right. And they just are having an existential crisis here. What do we do? What do we do?
What do we talk
about
on
these microphones?
Right.
What do we talk about?
Right.
Bringing that question to someone like RFK Jr. or Marianne, whoever else might enter into the race. And if they were to do that and did have some energy behind them, is there something about those candidates that you think makes them fundamentally not someone you would want to kind of partner with in that way? Or do you see that as a real possibility?
What a ludicrous question. If two candidates who have not promised a dirty break, if they promised a dirty break and they had energy behind them, which they really don't have, would that be worth supporting? Here's Shama Sawant.
First of all, I would say the onus is not on us as working people to provide support for them and then try to glean out maybe there is something worth supporting. It's on them. If they're going to run as alternatives to Biden, then the onus is on them to show why they are fighting for, how they're fighting for working people, or that we should see them as fighters for working people. I think.
Okay, so this is interesting because what Shama says there is obviously 100% right.
Right.
But if you see Bree's face, Shama's not talking to a working person. Shama's talking to a podcast host who wants a candidate, right? Shama's talking to a recruiter. She's not talking to an ordinary person. So Shama says, well, look, it's not on us to go and ask them, would you be interested in doing this? It's on them to present their case to us. But the incentives are not what she realizes. Shama's talking to Brianna Joy Gray, who, as we just said, can't imagine not having a candidate to back. And so that's where she's talking past her a bit. But no, absolutely correct.
Them to show why they are fighting for, how they are fighting for working people, or that we should see them as fighters for working people. I think, Brianna, the bar has to be very high. It can't be based on the feeling of desperation that I know a lot of people are feeling, that, we don't want Biden, we need an alternative. Okay, so let's
it can't be based on a feeling of desperation that, oh, we don't want Biden, we need an alternative. You can't try and wish cast your way into a candidate out because you're feeling desperate, which is exactly what Brianna and Kyle and Crystal, that's exactly what they're all doing. They're desperate for a candidate, and so they're trying to concoct a case why this candidate is worth supporting. And Shama, who's an actual movement person, an actual movement leader, says, no, of course we can't do it that way. Of course we can't do it that way. Anything to add before we let her?
Well,